The blade hung in midair, not because King Theron hesitated, but because a skinny servant girl had stepped between steel and flesh. The entire throne room held its breath. In 17 years of rule, the Stone King had never once stopped an execution, never shown mercy, never flinched. But now his sword trembled, inches from her throat, and something ancient stirred beneath the marble floors. The girl didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just stared at him with those impossible green eyes and whispered, "Not today." What happens when this kingdom's most invisible outcast defies its most terrifying ruler? When mercy becomes a death sentence and love triggers a curse that could destroy them all? Stay until the end to find out how a branded servant girl became the only person who could save or damn an entire kingdom. Drop a comment with your city, hit that like button, button, and let's dive into this story. The morning Saren Vale decided to destroy her life started like any other, on her knees, scrubbing blood from marble. The throne room of Valdron Palace smelled like iron and fear. It always did after executions, which meant it smelled that way most mornings. Saren worked her brush into the grout between stones, watching pink water swirl down the drains built specifically for this purpose. Efficient. Everything in King Theron's palace was efficient. You missed a spot. Saren didn't look up. She knew that voice. Mira, one of the senior chambermaids who'd made tormenting Saren into a personal hobby. Where? Everywhere. Mira's laugh was sharp. But then, what can we expect from a marked one? Your kind can't do anything right. Saren's left hand twitched, the hand with the brand. A circular scar on her palm, lines radiating outward like a broken sun. The mark of forbidden power. The mark that made her less than human in the eyes of Valdron law. She'd been 3 when the palace mages tested her. Too young to understand what it meant when their instruments flared gold instead of the safe, predictable blue. Too young to run when they heeded the brand. Old enough to scream. The Stone King wants the floors perfect by noon, Mira continued, circling Saren like a carry-on bird. Lord Garrett's execution is scheduled. Important one. This. Treason against the crown. Saren's brush stilled. Lord Garrett, she knew that name. He'd been kind to her once. Slipped her an extra bread roll when no one was looking. Asked her name when everyone else called her the marked one. Or didn't acknowledge her existence at all. What did he do? Does it matter? Mira snorted. The Stone King doesn't make mistakes. If Lord Garrett's sentenced to die, he deserves it. The Stone King. Everyone called Theron that, though never to his face. Some said it was because of his gray eyes, cold and hard as granite. Others whispered it was because he had no heart at all, just a stone where normal men kept their compassion. 17 years on the throne, and he'd never once pardoned a criminal, never reduced a sentence, never showed mercy. Mercy, they said, was weakness. And King Theron Valdris had no weaknesses. Saren returned to scrubbing. Blood was stubborn. It clung to stone like it was trying to tell a story, refusing to be erased. She understood that impulse. By noon, the throne room gleamed. Saren had retreated to the servants' alcove, a small recess behind a pillar where she could watch the proceedings without being seen. It was her favorite spot in the palace. Invisible. Safe. The doors boomed open. King Theron entered first, as he always did. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the predatory grace of a wolf who'd never known fear. His crown was simple, black iron, no jewels. His clothes were practical, leather and dark fabric designed for movement, not ceremony. Everything about him screamed control. Behind him came the court, Lord Cassian, master of coin, whose smile never reached his eyes. Lady Ravel, mistress of whispers, who knew every secret in the kingdom and traded them like currency. Commander Cade, whose loyalty to Theron was absolute and terrifying. And High Oracle Moran, ancient and twisted, staff clicking against marble as he hobbled to his place of honor. Saren had always hated the Oracle. Something about his milky white eyes made her skin crawl. He claimed to see the future, and maybe he did. But whatever he saw there didn't make him kind. The prisoner was dragged in by 4 guards. Lord Garrett looked worse than Saren remembered, thinner, beaten, one eye swollen shut. But his spine was straight. Even now, facing death, he kept his dignity. Theron settled into his throne, a massive thing carved from black obsidian. He looked bored. "Lord Marcus Garrett," the herald announced, voice echoing. "You stand accused of treason against the crown, of conspiring with enemies of Valdron to undermine the king's authority, of plotting rebellion in the Eastern Territories. How do you answer?" "Guilty," Garrett said simply. A murmur ran through the court. Serene leaned forward. He wasn't supposed to admit it. He was supposed to deny, to beg, to make excuses. Theron's expression didn't change. "Why?" "Because you're wrong." The court fell silent. No one spoke to the Stone King that way. No one challenged him. Certainly, no one called him wrong. Garrett continued, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chains. "The eastern villages are starving, Your Majesty. Your grain taxes have bled them dry. I diverted supplies to feed children, to keep families alive through winter. If that's treason, then yes, I'm a traitor." "The grain funds are military," Theron said, tone flat, "which protects those same villages from invasion. Your sentimentality weakens the kingdom. My sentimentality keeps people alive. For now, until neighboring kingdoms see our weakness and attack." Theron leaned forward slightly. "Dead children feed no one, Lord Garrett, but a strong military ensures there will be children to feed next year and the year after. You cannot see beyond immediate suffering to strategic necessity. And you can't see past strategy to recognize suffering at all." Something flickered in Theron's eyes. So brief, Saren almost missed it. Not anger, something colder. "That," the king said softly, "is what makes me an effective ruler, and you a dead one." He stood, drew his sword. The blade was beautiful, dark steel with a silver edge, runes etched along its length. Execution blade, the courtiers called it. It had ended hundreds of lives. "Kneel," Theron commanded. Garrett knelt. The king descended from his throne, boots clicking on the marble Saren had scrubbed clean just hours ago. He positioned himself behind the condemned man, raised the sword. Sunlight caught the edge, turning it white hot. This was the moment. This was always the moment. The doomed criminal would beg or curse or pray. The king would swing, the head would fall, blood would spray across perfect floors. And tomorrow, Saren would scrub it clean again. Except Lord Garrett had given her bread, had asked her name, had looked at her like she was a person instead of a problem. Except the eastern villages were full of children who would starve if no one helped them. Except Theron was about to kill the only noble in this entire cursed palace who'd shown her kindness. Saren's feet moved before her brain caught up. One moment she was in her alcove, safe and hidden. The next she was sprinting across the throne room, her worn servant's shoes slapping against marble. People shouted. Someone grabbed for her and missed. She heard Mira shriek, "Stop her! She's marked!" But she didn't stop. She reached Theron just as he began his downswing and stepped directly between the blade and Garrett's neck. Time shattered. The sword stopped an inch from Saren's throat, actually stopped, hung in midair like it had struck an invisible wall. Theron's eyes went wide, the first genuine expression she'd ever seen on his face. Shock, confusion. Behind them, someone screamed. The oracle's voice cut through the chaos. "The curse! The curse awakens!" Saren felt it then, a surge of something beneath her feet. The marble cracked. Ancient runes carved into the foundation of the throne room began to glow, pulsing with golden light. The air pressure changed, making her ears pop. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Theron stumbled backward, and his sword clattered to the floor. He stared at his hands. They were shaking. The Stone King's hands were shaking. "What?" His voice cracked. He swallowed hard, tried again. "What did you do?" Saren didn't know. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. Every eye in the throne room was locked on her, the invisible marked girl who'd just committed suicide by stupidity. Commander Cade recovered first, drawing his weapon. "Seize her! She's used forbidden! No one touches her!" Theron's roar shook the walls. Cade froze mid-lunge, sword raised. The entire court went statue still. The king's eyes had changed. They were still gray, still hard, but something moved behind them now. Something that looked almost like fear. "Everyone out," Theron said quietly. "Now." "Your Majesty," the oracle began. Out! They fled. Nobles, guards, servants, even Cade retreated, though he looked ready to murder someone. Within 30 seconds, the throne room was empty except for Saren, Theron, and Lord Garrett, who remained kneeling, forgotten. Saren found her voice. I wasn't trying to. Why? Theron cut her off. He stalked toward her, and every instinct screamed at her to run, but she was trapped between him and Garrett. Nowhere to go. Why did you interfere? Because he's a good man. He committed treason. He fed starving children. He weakened the kingdom's defenses. Better a weak kingdom with living children than a strong one full of corpses. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. She clapped her hand over her mouth, horrified. You didn't argue with the Stone King. You didn't challenge him. You certainly didn't yell at him. But Theron didn't strike her, didn't call the guards. He just stared, like he was seeing her for the first time. What's your name? He asked. Saren. Saren Vale. How long have you served in my palace, Saren Vale? 14 years, since I was 3. His jaw tightened. And in 14 years, how many executions have you witnessed? All of them. She met his eyes, surprised by her own boldness. I clean up after. Someone has to scrub the blood. Something passed over his face, too quick to identify. He turned away, paced to his throne, braced his hands on the armrests. His shoulders rose and fell with each breath. The curse, he said finally. Do you know what that is? Saren shook her head. 500 years ago, Valdren was founded by my ancestor, King Theron I. He was brutal, effective. He conquered half the continent through sheer ruthlessness. But he had one weakness. He fell in love with a seer named Lyris. He paused, staring at the glowing runes still pulsing in the floor. Lyris warned him that his cruelty would destroy the kingdom. That mercy was strength, not weakness. He laughed at her, so she cursed him, and every ruler who came after. The curse is simple. If a Valdren king ever shows mercy, it will turn his heart to stone. Literally, he'll die within days. Heart crystallized in his chest. Saren's blood ran cold. That's why I never pardon, never reduce sentences, never hesitate. His hands clenched on the stone. Mercy kills me, so I excised it completely. I became the Stone King so I could stay alive. But you stopped, Saren whispered. Just now. You stopped the blade. I didn't. He turned to face her, and his eyes were haunted. That's the problem. I tried to kill you. I wanted to complete the execution, but I couldn't. My arm wouldn't move. For the first time in my life, I felt. He cut himself off, jaw working. Felt what? Compassion. The word came out like a curse. When you stepped in front of my blade, I felt compassion for you, admiration for your courage, horror at the thought of cutting you down. And the moment I felt those things, the curse activated. The runes pulsed brighter as if confirming his words. So I'm killing you, Saren said numbly. By making you feel mercy, I'm killing you. No. Theron descended from his throne, approached her slowly. You're not killing me. You've triggered something that was always waiting. The curse was designed to punish mercy, but also to test it, to see if a Valdron king could ever be strong enough to choose compassion despite the cost. He stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was even more intimidating, tall enough that she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. I have a proposition for you, Saren Vale. She swallowed. What kind of proposition? Become my mercy proxy. You're hit. What? Every judgment I make, every sentence I pass, you will review it. You will be the voice of compassion I cannot allow myself to feel. You will argue for leniency, for understanding, for mercy. And when I make my final decision, it will be with your perspective weighed against strategic necessity. Saren stared at him. You want me to fight you on every execution? I want you to save me from myself. His voice dropped. The curse is awake now. If I continue as I have, showing no mercy, feeling no compassion, it will grow stronger. It will consume me from the inside until there's nothing left but stone. But if I can balance mercy with strength, compassion with strategy. He trailed off. You might survive, Saren finished. We might both survive. He glanced at Lord Garrett, still kneeling silently. Him too, if you accept. Saren's mind raced. This was insane. She was a servant, marked, powerless. And he wanted her to advise the king on matters of life and death? And if I refuse? Then I execute you both right now, Saren said simply. I cannot allow rebellion to go unpunished, and I cannot allow you to live knowing my greatest weakness. There it was. The trap. Accept his offer and step into a world that would eat her alive, or refuse and die alongside the one man who'd shown her kindness. Not really a choice at all. I accept, Saren said. Saren nodded once. Then we begin now. Lord Garrett, your sentence is commuted to exile. You will leave Valdron tonight and never return. If you step foot in this kingdom again, you will die. Do you understand? Garrett, who'd been silent through the entire exchange, finally spoke. His voice was hoarse. Yes, Your Majesty. Go. Commander Cade will see you to the border. Garrett stood on shaking legs, bowed deeply, and left. As he passed Saren, he caught her eye and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Then she was alone with the king. We need to establish rules, Saren said briskly, back to business. First, you will attend all court sessions, all judgments, all meetings where I make decisions affecting life and death. Second, you will speak honestly, without fear of punishment. I cannot weigh mercy properly if you're too afraid to voice it. Third, he paused. You will never, under any circumstances, reveal the true nature of the curse to anyone. If word spreads that mercy could kill me, my enemies will exploit it. Who knows already? The Oracle, my inner counsel, and now you. His eyes hardened. The Oracle orchestrated this, by the way. He's been waiting for the curse to activate for decades. He wants to study it, use it, be very careful around him. Saren nodded slowly. What do I call you? In court? Your Majesty, Sire, King Theron. He considered. In private, you may call me Theron. We'll be spending considerable time together. Formality becomes tedious. And you'll call me Saren, unless you prefer something else. She almost laughed. The king was asking her preference. The king who'd nearly beheaded her 20 minutes ago. Saren's fine. Good. He turned toward the throne, then stopped. One more thing. You'll need new quarters. Servants' housing is beneath your station now. My station? You're my official advisor. The voice of mercy, we'll call it. That comes with a title, a stipend, and rooms in the noble wing. He shot her a look that might have been amusement. Also new clothes. Those rags are offensive. Saren glanced down at her threadbare servant's dress, stained with blood and scrub water. She'd worn it for 3 years. It was the nicest thing she owned. I don't need... It wasn't a request. Theron's voice went flat. If you're to have any authority in court, you must look the part. Nobles respect appearances. They'll dismiss you as a servant if you dress like one. He was right. She hated that he was right. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, he echoed. Then, almost as an afterthought, you were very brave. Today. Foolish, but brave. Something warm bloomed in Saren's chest. Pride, maybe. Or surprise that the Stone King could recognize bravery at all. Thank you, she managed. He nodded once and left, leaving her alone in the throne room with its glowing runes and blood-stained floors. Saren sank to her knees, adrenaline finally draining away. Her hands were shaking. Her breathing came too fast. She'd just agreed to become advisor to the most dangerous man in Valdron. She'd just stepped into court politics that could crush her like an insect. And somehow, impossibly, she'd saved a good man's life. The runes beneath the marble pulsed once more, then faded. But Saren could still feel them, warm against her palms, thrumming with ancient power. The curse was awake, and she'd just become the only thing standing between the Stone King and death. The next 3 days were a blur. Saren was moved from the servants' quarters, a cramped room she'd shared with 4 other girls, to a suite in the noble wing that was larger than any space she'd ever inhabited. It had windows. Actual windows with glass and curtains. a bed with a real mattress, a private washroom. She stood in the center of it and cried. The palace seamstress, a severe woman named Hilda, arrived with an entourage of assistants and enough fabric to clothe a small army. They measured Saren like she was livestock, tutting over her unacceptable proportions and complete lack of deportment. "The king wants you presentable by tomorrow's council meeting," Hilda announced, draping burgundy silk across Saren's shoulders. "We'll need to work miracles." Saren bit her tongue. Hard. By evening, she had 6 new dresses, all in rich dark colors that Hilda insisted minimized her common features, and a headache from being poked with pins. She'd also acquired a new enemy. Lady Ravel had visited, ostensibly to welcome her to court society, but actually to deliver threats wrapped in honeyed words. "Such a touching story," Ravel had purred, circling Serene like a shark. The marked servant girl, elevated by royal whim. Of course, whims change. King Theron is known for his pragmatism. One wrong word, one misstep, and you'll be back scrubbing floors. Or worse. Saren had smiled blandly and said nothing. She'd learned long ago that silence infuriated people more than any comeback. But Ravel's words haunted her. The woman was right. Saren was here on Theron's sufferance. One mistake and she'd be discarded. She couldn't afford mistakes. The council meeting the next morning was a nightmare. Saren arrived early, dressed in a deep green gown that made her eyes look brighter. Hilda had insisted on styling her hair, pulling it back from her face in a way that felt exposing but apparently read as sophisticated to nobles. The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less intimidating. A massive table dominated the center, carved from dark wood and surrounded by high-backed chairs. Maps covered the walls, Valdron and its neighboring kingdoms, marked with pins and notes in a dozen different hands. Theron was already there, reviewing documents. He glanced up when she entered, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or approval. "Saren," he said simply. "Sit there." He gestured to a chair at his right hand. The place of honor. The place usually reserved for the king's closest advisor. Saren sat, heart hammering. One by one, the others arrived. Commander Cade, who glared at her like she was a personal insult. Lord Cassian, who assessed her with calculating eyes. Lady Ravel, whose smile was all teeth. And finally, the Oracle, hobbling in with his staff, those milky eyes sweeping across her like she was something to be studied and dissected. "Let us begin," Theron said. The meeting covered military movements, trade negotiations, and a border dispute with the kingdom of Keldar. Saren stayed silent, absorbing information. She had no context for most of it. No training in strategy or diplomacy. She was drowning, and everyone knew it. Then Cassian brought up the grain tax. "The eastern territories are still resisting, Your Majesty," he said smoothly. "Lord Garrett's rebellion emboldened them. They claim they cannot meet the increased quotas." "Then make an example," Cade growled. "Burn a village, hang the local leadership, show them the cost of defiance." Saren's stomach dropped. "An efficient solution," Theron said neutrally. "Lady Ravel?" "I agree with Commander Cade. Fear ensures compliance." "Lord Cassian?" "From a fiscal perspective, dead peasants pay no taxes. But fear prevents future rebellion. I support the commander's approach." Theron's gaze shifted to Saren. The entire table fell silent. This was it. Her first test. "Saren," Theron said quietly, "your perspective?" She forced herself to breathe, to think. These people wanted her to fail, wanted her to stumble over her words, to prove she didn't belong here. "Burning a village won't increase grain production," she said, proud that her voice stayed steady. "It will decrease it. You'll lose workers. Fields will go untended. The quota won't be met anyway, but now you've created martyrs and guaranteed future rebellion." Cade's eyes narrowed. "So we do nothing? Let them defy the crown without consequence?" "No, we adjust the quota to something achievable." She met his glare. Lord Garrett was right. The eastern villages are starving. They can't give what they don't have. But if we reduce the quota to a sustainable level and provide aid to get them through this season, they'll meet it, and they'll remember the crown's mercy. "Mercy is weakness," Cade spat. "Mercy is investment," Saren countered. A living, loyal village produces more than a dead, resentful one. This isn't sentiment, it's math. Cassian's eyebrows rose. Even Ravel looked surprised. Theron leaned back in his chair, studying Serene with those unreadable gray eyes. You suggest reducing the quota and providing aid. That costs the crown revenue and resources. Short-term, yes. Long-term, it builds loyalty and increases production. And if they take our aid and rebel anyway, then you have moral authority to respond with force. Right now, you'd be punishing them for something outside their control. That creates sympathy. But if they reject genuine help, future punishment is justified. Silence stretched. Theron's fingers drummed on the table. Once, twice. We'll try Saren's approach, he said finally. Reduce the eastern quota by 30%. Allocate emergency grain stores to get them through planting season. If they meet the new quota, we maintain it. If they don't, Commander Cade gets his example. Cade looked mutinous. Ravel's smile was knife-sharp, but Cassian nodded slowly, as if reconsidering his initial assessment of Saren. The Oracle said nothing, just watched her with those dead eyes. The meeting continued. Saren contributed twice more, arguing for rehabilitation instead of execution for a group of poachers and suggesting negotiation before military action in the Keldar border dispute. Theron accepted one recommendation, rejected the other. But he listened, every time. And that was more than Saren had dared hope for. When the council finally adjourned, she felt wrung out, exhausted, like she'd just survived a battle. Theron caught her arm as she stood to leave. A word. The others filed out, though the Oracle lingered near the door, clearly trying to eavesdrop. Theron's pointed stare finally sent him shuffling away. You did well, the king said once they were alone. Saren blinked. I thought you'd be angry. I contradicted Commander Cade. You made logical arguments based on compassion tempered with pragmatism. Exactly what I need. He released her arm. Cade is a brilliant military mind, but he sees only threats and force. You balance that. Keep doing it. Relief washed through her. So, I'm not fired after one meeting? Not yet. Was that amusement in his voice? Though I should warn you, the court will hate you for this. Nobles don't like being challenged by former servants. They'll try to undermine you. Lady Ravel already threatened me. Of course she did. He moved to the window, staring out at the palace grounds. Ravel trades in secrets and leverage. She'll dig into your past, look for anything to use against you. I suggest you get ahead of it. Tell me anything she might find. Saren hesitated. There wasn't much. She'd been invisible for most of her life. But the brand, she said quietly. When I was tested as a child, the mages said I had forbidden power. They never specified what kind, just marked me and moved on. Theron turned. You don't know what your power is? I've never used it, never tried. She held up her scarred palm. This mark makes me untouchable. If I revealed actual magic, they'd execute me. Show me. What? Use it now, in private. His eyes were intent. I need to know what we're working with. Saren's pulse spiked. She'd spent 14 years suppressing whatever lurked inside her, hiding it, denying it existed. I don't know how, she admitted. Try. He stepped closer. The curse is tied to magic, ancient, powerful magic. If you have a gift, it might be connected. We need to understand it. She closed her eyes, reached inward to that place she never touched, the warm, golden thing that had pulsed in her chest since she was small, the thing that made the testing instruments flare. Nothing happened. I can't think about the throne room, Theron said softly. When you stepped in front of my blade, what did you feel? Terror, desperation. She swallowed. Certainty that I had to stop you, no matter the cost. And warmth, this spreading warmth in my chest, like sunlight from the inside. Focus on that. She did. Reached for that memory, that feeling. The warmth grew, spreading down her arms, tingling in her fingertips. Light exploded from her hands. Saren yelped, stumbling backward. Golden light poured from her palms, bright and warm and alive. It didn't burn, didn't hurt. It just was. And it felt like hope. Theron stared, transfixed. Lyris's gift, he breathed. What? The seer who cursed my ancestor. She had the same power, light magic. The magic of healing and truth and mercy, Saren finished, understanding flooding through her. Yes. He reached out carefully, let the light wash over his hand. It swirled around his fingers like water, warm and gentle. You're her descendant. You have to be. That's why the curse responded to you, why it awoke when you showed mercy. The light flickered and died as Saren's concentration broke. She stared at her hands, heart racing. I'm related to the woman who cursed your family? Apparently. Theron's expression was unreadable. Which means you're the only person alive who might be able to break it. Or make it worse, Saren thought, but didn't say. The oracle's words echoed in her memory. The curse awakens. She was standing in the center of something ancient and dangerous, and she had no idea how to navigate it. Get some rest, Theron said, heading for the door. Tomorrow we have petitioners, criminals seeking leniency. Your real work begins. He left her standing in the empty council chamber, hands still tingling with residual magic, mind spinning with impossible revelations. Saren was descended from the seer who'd cursed Valdron's kings. She carried the same magic, and somehow that made her the Stone King's only hope for survival. No pressure. The petitioners started arriving at dawn. Saren watched them from her window, a line of desperate people stretching across the palace courtyard, some in chains, others clutching children or elderly parents. They'd come seeking the king's mercy, though most probably didn't know mercy now had a voice. Her stomach churned. She'd barely slept, mind spinning with revelations about curses and magic and bloodlines she never knew she had. Now she was supposed to decide who lived and who died. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Enter, she called, expecting a servant. Commander Cade filled the doorway instead. He was a massive man, scarred, battle-hardened, with eyes that had seen too much death to be bothered by one more. His hand rested casually on his sword hilt as he stepped into her room uninvited. We need to talk, he said. Saren forced herself to stay calm. Running would show weakness. About what? About you knowing your place. He moved closer, deliberately invading her space. Yesterday's council was a fluke. The king indulged your peasant logic because you're new and novel. But don't mistake his curiosity for respect. Is that all? His jaw tightened. You countermanded my recommendation, made me look weak in front of the council. I offered an alternative strategy. If you feel threatened by that. Threatened? He laughed, harsh and sharp. Girl, I've commanded armies, held borders against invasions that would have crushed lesser men. You think I'm threatened by a marked servant playing dress-up? Saren met his glare. Then why are you here? To warn you. He leaned down until his face was inches from hers. The court is a battlefield. You just walked onto it wearing civilian clothes. Ravel will destroy you with rumors. Cassian will manipulate you into positions that serve him. And the Oracle... He stopped, something flickering in his expression. Watch the Oracle. He sees you as a tool, nothing more. Despite herself, Saren felt a chill. Why tell me this? Because the king needs real advisors, not sycophants. If you're going to do this job, do it right. But understand, mercy has limits. Push too far, and you'll get people killed. He straightened, including yourself. He left without waiting for a response. Saren sank onto her bed, hands shaking. Cade's threat had been delivered like advice, which somehow made it worse. He wasn't trying to intimidate her out of malice. He genuinely believed she was dangerous, to the kingdom and to Theron. Maybe he was right. The throne room was packed by the time Serene arrived. Petitioners filled one side, nobles and courtiers the other, with Theron presiding from his obsidian throne. The oracle stood to his left, Saren's new position to his right. She took her seat, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. Her new dress, midnight blue with silver threading, felt like armor and target simultaneously. Theron glanced at her, expression neutral. Ready? No. Yes. Then we begin. He gestured to the herald. First petitioner. A woman was brought forward, middle-aged, gaunt, with desperate eyes. She fell to her knees before the throne. Your Majesty, I beg for my son's life. He's only 16. He didn't mean to. Your son, the herald interrupted, reading from a scroll, stole 3 horses from Lord Brennan's stable. He was caught attempting to sell them in the merchant district. The crime is theft of noble property. The sentence is death. The woman's sob echoed through the chamber. He was trying to help. Our farm failed. We had nothing. He thought... Silence. Theron's voice cut through her pleading. The law is clear. Theft from nobility is punishable by execution. He turned to Saren. Your assessment? Every noble in the room leaned forward. This was theater now. They wanted to see the marked girl stumble. Saren stood, grateful her voice remained steady. The boy is 16, first offense. The horses were recovered undamaged. He acted out of desperation, not malice. Desperation doesn't excuse theft, Lord Brennan called out from the crowd. If we show leniency, every starving peasant will think they can steal from their betters. If we execute every starving peasant who steals, we'll run out of workers, Saren countered. She addressed Theron directly. Execution serves no strategic purpose here. The boy could work off his debt, 5 years indentured service to Lord Brennan. The mother keeps her son. Brennan gets free labor. The law is upheld without wasting a life. Murmurs rippled through the nobles. Brennan looked ready to argue, but Theron raised a hand. The sentence is commuted to indentured service, 5 years. If the boy attempts to flee or commits another crime, the death sentence will be reinstated immediately. His eyes found the sobbing mother. Understand? Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you. Take her out. Guards escorted the woman away. Saren caught a glimpse of her face, pure relief mixed with disbelief. A life saved. Her first real victory. It felt impossibly fragile. The petitioners continued. A merchant accused of fraud. Saren argued for restitution instead of prison, won a partial victory. A soldier who'd deserted during wartime, she tried to argue combat trauma, but Theron rejected it entirely. Execution stood. The soldier was dragged away screaming. Saren tasted bile. Next, Theron said, unmoved. This was the pattern. Some she saved, some she couldn't. And with each judgment, she felt the weight pressing down harder, the impossible responsibility of deciding who deserved mercy and who didn't. By midday, the oracle requested a recess. Theron granted it, and the throne room emptied for lunch. Saren stayed in her seat, too exhausted to move. You're doing better than I expected. She looked up. Theron stood beside her, having dismissed the last of his guards. I couldn't save the soldier, she said quietly. No, because his crime endangered others. Desertion in wartime creates tactical vulnerabilities that get entire units killed. He sat on the throne's armrest, casual, almost human. Mercy has to be strategic, Saren. Not everyone deserves it. How do you decide? Impact, intent, precedent. He ticked them off on his fingers. The boy stealing horses? Desperate. First-time offense? Recoverable crime. Mercy sets a precedent that compassion exists without undermining law. The deserter? His actions led to 17 deaths when his unit was ambushed without adequate numbers. Mercy there says cowardice is acceptable. So it's just math to you. It has to be. His voice went flat. If I let emotion guide me, people die. Enemies exploit. The kingdom fractures. Cold logic keeps us strong. And slowly turns you to stone. His jaw tightened. Better stone than weak. Are those really the only options? Before he could answer, the oracle hobbled over, staff clicking against marble. Fascinating display this morning, my dear. You're quite the little savior. Saren didn't trust her voice, so she said nothing. Tell me, the oracle continued, those dead eyes locked on her face. Do you feel it when you argue for mercy? The warmth? The light trying to manifest? Her blood went cold. How did he know about the light? I see many things, he said, as if reading her thoughts. including futures that haven't happened yet. Would you like to know yours? Morin, Theron's voice cracked like a whip. Enough. I'm merely offering guidance, Your Majesty. You're fishing for information. Get out. The oracle smiled, thin and cruel, but retreated. His staff clicks faded into the hallway. Saren exhaled slowly. He knows about my magic. He's known since the moment it awakened. He probably orchestrated Lord Garrett's entire trial just to trigger this. Theron stood, pacing. The oracle has been obsessed with the curse for decades. He thinks it's the key to some greater power. Having you here, a descendant of Lyris, is exactly what he wants. So what do I do? Stay away from him. Don't use your magic where he can see. And don't, under any circumstances, tell him anything he doesn't already know. She nodded, filing that away with all the other survival rules she was learning. The afternoon session was worse. A group of 7 prisoners was brought in, rebels from the Eastern Territories who'd attacked a tax collector. 1 guard was dead, 2 others injured. The rebels had been caught fleeing with stolen grain. This wasn't desperation. This was violence. Theron's expression was carved ice as the charges were read. The crime is murder and rebellion. The sentence is execution for all involved. Saren's mouth went dry. 7 people. 7 deaths. Your assessment? Theron's eyes found hers. She stood on shaking legs. Think. There had to be an angle, a way to argue this without sounding naive. They killed in the commission of theft, she began carefully. That's different from premeditated murder. And they're from the Eastern Territories, the same region we just agreed was starving. They murdered a man doing his duty, Commander Cade interjected. There's no mitigation for that. I'm not arguing innocence, I'm arguing context. Saren addressed the full court now. If we execute all 7, we make martyrs. The Eastern Territories will see this as proof that the Crown doesn't care if they starve. But if we execute the ringleaders and offer the others a choice, hard labor or exile, we show that murder has consequences while acknowledging the circumstances that led to desperation. Weakness, someone muttered. Pragmatism, Saren shot back. Dead rebels inspire more rebels. But rebels shown mercy and given a second chance? Some will be grateful. Some will spread word that the king can be reasoned with. It's strategic compassion. Silence fell. Theron's fingers drummed on his throne, that telltale sign he was actually considering her words. Identify the ringleader, he said finally. A guard stepped forward. The tall one, center, Marcus Reed. He struck the killing blow. Reed was young, maybe 25, with defiant eyes and a split lip from his capture. He glared at Theron without flinching. Marcus Reed, Theron said quietly, do you regret your actions? No. Reed's voice was hoarse but firm. That guard was stealing food from starving children. I'd kill him again. A collective gasp rippled through the nobles. Even Saren winced, admitting it was one thing. Being proud of it was suicide. Theron stood, descended from his throne. He walked until he was face to face with Reed. You murdered a man doing his lawful duty and call it justice. Your laws starve my people. That's not justice. It's oppression. And your answer is violence. My answer is survival. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, king and rebel, stone and fire. You'll hang at dawn, Theron said. Publicly. Your death will remind others that murder carries consequences. He turned to the remaining prisoners. The rest of you have a choice. 10 years hard labor building roads in the Northern Territories, or permanent exile from Valdron. Decide by tonight. He returned to his throne, dismissed the prisoners with a wave. Reed was dragged away still defiant. The others looked shell-shocked. Saren had saved 6 lives and condemned 1. It didn't feel like a victory. The throne room emptied slowly. Nobles clustered in groups, whispering behind hands. Saren caught fragments. Too soft. Dangerous precedent. Marked witch. But tuned them out. Theron remained seated, staring at nothing. You disagree with my judgment, he said without looking at her. I think Marcus Reed was desperate and angry and wrong, Saren said carefully. But I don't know if he deserved to die for it. He killed a man. Not in self-defense. Not in combat. In anger. Because he disagreed with the law. Theron's voice was tired. If I let that stand, every rebel with a grievance will think murder is justified. I can't show mercy there, Saren, not without inviting chaos. I know. And she did. She hated it, but she understood the logic. I just wish there was another way. So do I. He finally looked at her. This is the burden. Every decision has a cost. Every mercy denied weighs on me. But the alternative, letting emotion override strategy, costs more in the long run. Saren wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be a better balance. But exhaustion and the weight of the day crushed the words before they formed. Get some rest, Theron said. Tomorrow is Lord Cassian's budget review. Less blood, more numbers. She nodded and left, grateful to escape. But in the hallway, Lady Ravel was waiting. A word, dear girl. Saren's every instinct screamed danger, but refusing would look weak. What do you want? To help you. Ravel's smile was poisoned honey. You've made quite the impression. The voice of mercy, saving peasants from the king's wrath. Very noble. Is there a point to this? The point is that nobility in Valdrin is a performance. You've stepped onto the stage, but you don't know your lines. She circled Saren slowly. For instance, did you know that Lord Brennan's stables were targeted because his son beats his stable hands? The boy you saved? His older brother died from one of those beatings. That's why he stole the horses. Saren's stomach dropped. Why didn't anyone say, because Brennan pays well for silence, and because peasant deaths don't matter to people like him? Ravel stopped directly in front of her. Your mercy saved a boy seeking revenge disguised as survival. Noble, yes. But you were manipulated, and now Brennan owes you nothing while believing you're a fool. Heat rushed to Saren's face. If you knew that, why didn't you speak up? Because watching you stumble is more valuable than helping you. Ravel's eyes glittered. Every mistake you make in public weakens your position. Every time the court sees you as naive, they trust you less. And when they stop trusting you, the king stops listening. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm generous. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Commander Cade visited you this morning. Whatever he said, remember, he serves the king, not you. If Theron ordered him to kill you, he'd do it without hesitation. She glided away, leaving Saren shaking in the empty corridor. The information about Brennan's son gnawed at her through dinner. She'd been played, used. The mother's tears had been real, but the story incomplete. She'd argued for mercy without knowing the full truth. Theron had warned her. Every decision has a cost. She just hadn't expected the cost to include her own credibility. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Saren lay in her too large bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every judgment. The boy she'd saved was a would-be murderer. The merchant she'd shown leniency might be a con artist. The soldier she'd failed. Maybe he was just terrified, not cowardly. How was she supposed to decide who deserved compassion when everyone lied? A soft scraping sound jerked her upright. Someone was at her window. Saren's heart hammered. Third floor. No balcony. There shouldn't be anyone at her window. The glass swung inward, and a figure slipped through, graceful, quiet, wrapped in dark clothes. Saren grabbed the nearest object, a candlestick, and brandished it like a weapon. Get out, or I'll scream. The figure raised both hands. Please don't. A woman's voice. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you breaking into my room? Because the hallways are watched. The woman pulled down her hood, revealing a young face, maybe 19, with sharp eyes and calloused hands. My name is Alara. I'm Marcus Reed's sister. Saren's grip on the candlestick tightened. He's going to hang tomorrow. I can't change that. I know. Alara's voice cracked. But I need you to understand he's not a murderer. Not really. The guard he killed? That man burned our village 2 months ago. 37 people died, including our mother. Said we were harboring rebels. We weren't. We were just trying to survive. The room tilted. Why didn't Marcus say that during his trial? Because it wouldn't matter. The guard was following orders. Probably. Maybe. We don't even know. But in Valdrin, following orders excuses anything. My brother knew no one would care that the man who killed our mother was stealing the last of our grain. Tears streamed down Alara's face. He didn't kill for politics. He killed because he saw the man who murdered our family, and something broke inside him. Saren set down the candlestick with shaking hands. I'm sorry about your mother, about your village, but I'm not asking for mercy. Alara wiped her eyes roughly. Marcus made his choice. He knew the cost. I'm asking you to remember that the people you're judging have stories you'll never hear, wounds you'll never see. And sometimes the law is wrong. If the law is wrong, we change it. We can't change it. Alara's voice rose, then dropped to a desperate whisper. We're peasants, marked ones, nobodies. You think we have any power to change laws? The only power we have is what we take. And yes, sometimes that's violent and wrong, but it's all we've got. Saren thought of her own powerlessness. 14 years invisible. 14 years scrubbing blood from floors while nobles decided who lived and died. She'd been given a voice by sheer accident, the king's curse activating at the precise moment she chose courage over survival. What would she have become without that accident? How desperate would she have grown? I'll talk to the king, she heard herself say. You can't save him. I told you. I know. But I can make sure he dies knowing someone heard his story, someone who actually listened. Saren met Alara's eyes. And I'll push for an investigation into that village burning. If the guard acted without orders, that needs to be known. If he was ordered to do it, that needs to be known too. Alara's expression was unreadable. Why would you do that? Because you're right. The law is sometimes wrong. And if I'm supposed to be the voice of mercy, I need to hear the stories no one else wants to listen to. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two young women from different worlds, connected by tragedy and impossible circumstances. Thank you, Alara whispered. Then she was gone, slipping back through the window like smoke. Saren stood alone, mind racing. She'd just promised to investigate a village burning that the crown might have ordered. If she was wrong, if this was a trap or manipulation, it would destroy her. But if she was right, it meant Valdrin's justice system was even more broken than she'd thought. Dawn came too fast. Saren dressed in gray, the color of mourning, and made her way to Theron's private study. She'd sent a message requesting an audience. He'd granted it, though the terse reply suggested he wasn't pleased about being summoned before breakfast. She found him at his desk, surrounded by maps and reports. He looked exhausted. This better be urgent, he said without preamble. Saren closed the door. Marcus Reed's sister came to me last night. His expression darkened. How did she get into the palace? Climbed, not the point. Saren took a breath. She told me the guard Reed killed had burned their village 2 months ago. 37 dead, including their mother. Reed wasn't rebelling, he was avenging. Revenge isn't justice. I know, but if the guard burned a village without cause, that's murder too. We should investigate. Theron set down his pen carefully. You want me to investigate a dead man based on the word of a condemned rebel's sister. I want you to investigate whether your guards are committing atrocities in your name. Silence stretched between them. Theron's jaw worked, and for a moment she thought he'd dismiss her entirely. If I investigate and find nothing, he said slowly, it makes Reed look worse, a liar as well as a murderer. And if you find something, then I have to punish guardsmen for following what might have been legitimate orders. It destabilizes military discipline. He stood, paced to the window. You're asking me to risk morale in order for a chance at vindicating a man who's already condemned. I'm asking you to make sure your justice is actually just. He turned, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Not anger, something deeper, wearier. You have no idea what you're asking, he said quietly. The Eastern Territories are on the edge of full rebellion. If word spreads that I'm investigating my own guards based on rebel testimony, it signals weakness. Other villages will think they can claim abuse and avoid consequences. The whole region could ignite. Or they'll see that you care about truth, that mercy and justice aren't contradictions. In an ideal world, maybe. His voice was bitter. In this one, they'll see an opportunity to exploit. Saren crossed to him, standing close enough to feel the tension radiating off him. You asked me to be your conscience, to balance your strategy with compassion. This is what that looks like. It's messy, it's risky, but if you only show mercy when it's convenient, it's not really mercy, it's just politics. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. It was small, tired, but real. You're going to be the death of me, he said, or the saving of you. We'll see. He moved to his desk, scribbled something on parchment. I'll send Commander Cade to investigate, discreetly. If he finds evidence of unauthorized village burnings, I'll posthumously dishonor the guard and compensate Reed's family. It won't save Marcus, but it might give his sister some peace. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If Cade finds nothing, this makes you look like a naive fool who believes any sob story. The court will lose what little respect you've earned. I'll take that risk. He studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Why? You barely knew Reed. You condemned him yourself yesterday. Because Alara was right. I'm judging people based on fragments of their stories. If I'm going to do this job, I need the whole truth, even when it's ugly. Something shifted in Theron's expression. Respect, maybe. Or concern. You're either the bravest person I've met or the most reckless. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? That's what worries me. A knock interrupted them. Commander Cade entered without waiting for permission, his expression grim. Your Majesty, the Oracle requests an emergency council. He says it's about the curse. Theron went very still. What about it? He wouldn't say, just that you and the voice of mercy need to hear it immediately. Saren's stomach dropped. Nothing good came from the Oracle's prophecies. They assembled in the council chamber within minutes. The Oracle stood him the head of the table, looking far too pleased with himself. Thank you for coming, he said, voice dripping false courtesy. I've had a vision. About the curse. About what happens next. Get to the point, Theron snapped. The curse is growing stronger. Every act of mercy the king considers, every moment of compassion he feels, feeds it. The stone in his heart is spreading. The Oracle's dead eyes found Saren. And the catalyst is you, my dear. Your presence, your magic. Your very existence accelerates his transformation. Saren's blood turned to ice. You're lying. Am I? He gestured to Theron. Tell her, Your Majesty. Tell her about the pain in your chest, the cold that spreads through your veins after each judgment, the moments where your heart literally stops beating. Theron said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. No, Saren breathed. You said balancing mercy with strategy would save you. I hoped it would, Theron said quietly. But the Oracle is right. It's getting worse. Then I'll leave. I'll go, and the curse won't stop. The Oracle's smile widened. It's activated now. Removing you might slow it, but won't reverse it. The king is dying either way. Then what do we do? Saren demanded. That's the beautiful question, isn't it? The Oracle leaned on his staff. There might be a way to break the curse entirely, but it requires a sacrifice, a willing exchange of power. What kind of exchange? Your magic for his life. You channel Lyris's light into the king, burn away the curse at its source. But doing so will kill you. Your life for his. The Oracle's expression was eager, hungry. The perfect mercy, wouldn't you say? The voice of mercy dying to save the Stone King. Horror crashed over Saren. This was his plan. This was always his plan. Get her here, activate the curse, then use her death to break it. There has to be another way, she said desperately. If there is, I haven't seen it. Theron's voice cut through the room like a blade. We're not killing Saren. Then you'll die instead, probably within the month. The Oracle shrugged. Your choice, Your Majesty. I said no. How noble. But when the stone reaches your heart, you won't have a choice. You'll simply stop, and Valdrin will fall into chaos without an heir. The Oracle moved toward the door. Think about it. The girl's life, which has meant nothing to anyone until this moment, or the stability of an entire kingdom, seems like simple math to me. He left, staff clicking away into silence. Saren couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The oracle had just sentenced her to death and called it salvation. Saren, Theron started. Is it true? She forced herself to meet his eyes. Is the curse really killing you? His hesitation was answer enough. Then we find another way, she said, voice shaking. We break this curse without anyone dying. And if there is no other way, then we make one. She stood, legs unsteady. I didn't step in front of your blade just to die for you later. We're both surviving this. That's not negotiable. She fled before he could respond, before the tears threatening to break free could fall where anyone could see them. In the hallway outside, she nearly collided with Alara. The girl was being dragged away by guards, wrists bound. Her face was bruised. Fresh blood dripped from her split lip. What happened? Saren demanded. One guard sneered. Found her sneaking around the palace. Marked one, just like you. We're taking her to the dungeons. On what charge? Trespassing, conspiring with condemned criminals. Take your pick. Alara's eyes met Saren's, defiant, terrified, resigned. Told you the law doesn't care about our stories. The guards dragged her away. Saren stood frozen, watching another life slip through her fingers. She'd promised to help, promised to listen. And now Alara would rot in a dungeon, or worse, because she'd trusted Saren enough to climb through her window. The curse was accelerating. The oracle wanted her dead. The court despised her, and everyone she tried to save ended up in chains. This was mercy in Valdron. This was what compassion cost. And somewhere deep in her chest, where Lyrus's magic pulsed warm and golden, Saren felt something new kindling. Not light, rage. The rage didn't fade. It crystallized. Saren spent the rest of the day in her chambers, pacing like a caged animal. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alara's bruised face, heard Marcus Reed's defiant voice before they dragged him to the gallows, felt the weight of every judgment she'd failed to prevent. She'd been playing by their rules, speaking their language, trying to work within a system designed to crush people like her. And it was getting her nowhere. When the knock came after midnight, she almost ignored it, but the voice on the other side made her freeze. Saren, it's Theron. Let me in. She opened the door. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He was breathing too carefully, like each inhale hurt. You're in pain, she said, constantly. He stepped inside, closed the door. The oracle wasn't exaggerating. The curse is spreading faster. I can feel it in my chest, cold, heavy, like ice crystallizing around my heart. Then we need to figure out how to stop it. That's not why I'm here. He moved to her window, stared out at the darkened palace grounds. I wanted to tell you that I sent someone to retrieve Alara. She's been released. Saren's breath caught. You what? She trespassed because she trusted you, because you made her a promise. I can't have my voice of mercy's word mean nothing. He turned, and his expression was unreadable. She's been given money and safe passage to the border. I also sent word to Cade. He's to prioritize investigating that village burning, discreetly but thoroughly. Relief and confusion warred in Saren's chest. Why are you doing this? Because you were right, about needing the whole truth, about mercy being more than politics. He paused. And because watching you try to save everyone is... He stopped, jaw tightening. It's making me remember things I thought I'd buried. What things? That I wasn't always like this. His voice went quiet. When I was young, before I took the throne, I wanted to be a good king, a fair one. But my father taught me that fairness is a luxury kingdoms can't afford. That compassion gets people killed, so I learned to cut it out, to think only in terms of strategy and power. He rubbed his chest absently, like it ached. But then you stepped in front of my blade, and for the first time in 17 years, I felt something other than cold calculation. I felt, he struggled with the word, hope. That maybe there was another way to rule. That maybe I didn't have to be stoned to be strong. Saren's throat tightened. The curse is killing you because of me. The curse is killing me because of 500 years of my family choosing power over humanity. You didn't cause this. You just forced me to confront it. He met her eyes, and I'm not willing to let you die to save me. We're finding another way." The oracle said, "The oracle is a manipulative bastard who sees people as tools." Theron's voice went hard. "He's wanted to break this curse for decades because he thinks it holds some kind of cosmic power. He doesn't care if you live or die. He cares about the spectacle, the magic." So what do? We dig into the original curse, find the actual wording, the mechanism. There's always a loophole in these things. Magic has rules. We just need to find them. He pulled a small book from his coat, old, leather-bound, pages yellowed with age. "I found this in the Royal Archives. It's Lyris's journal, written while she was in love with King Theron I before she cursed him." Seren took it carefully. The cover was warm under her fingers, almost alive. "Have you read it?" "Some. It's fragmented, entries torn out, pages damaged by time. But there are references to her magic, to how light and stone are connected." He moved closer. "If you're her descendant, maybe her magic works the same way in you. Maybe we can use that. Or maybe I'll just accelerate your death faster. Then we'll die trying something instead of waiting to die doing nothing." His voice was fierce. "I'm tired of being helpless, Seren. Tired of letting fear dictate every choice. For once, I want to take a risk that actually matters." She looked at him, really looked, saw the exhaustion, the pain, the desperation he was trying to hide behind logic and strategy. He was terrified, and he was trusting her anyway. "Okay," she said, "we figure this out together." Relief flickered across his face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I have no idea what I'm doing." "Neither do I, but at least we're incompetent together." Despite everything, she almost smiled. He left an hour later, after they'd agreed to meet in secret each night to study Lyris's journal. No oracle, no council, just the two of them trying to dismantle a 500-year-old curse. Seren opened the journal once she was alone. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, like Lyris had been writing against time. The first entry made her chest ache. He doesn't understand what he's becoming. The stone isn't just metaphor, it's literal. Every time he chooses cruelty over compassion, a piece of his soul crystallizes. I can see it happening. The way his eyes go flat when he orders executions. The way he flinches less each time someone begs for mercy. I thought love would save him. I was wrong. Love without compassion is just possession. And he possesses everything, territory, power, people. But he doesn't cherish any of it. He just holds on tighter, afraid it'll be taken. I have to stop him, before there's nothing left to save. Seren flipped through more pages. Most were damaged or missing, but one passage stood out, circled in faded ink. The curse must be specific. Magic requires precision. If I make it too broad, it will consume everything. Too narrow, and he'll find loopholes. So, mercy will turn his heart to stone. But only mercy shown without understanding its cost. Mercy given from ignorance is weakness. Mercy given despite knowing the price, that's strength. If his descendant ever learns that difference, the curse can be broken. But they must choose it willingly. They must feel the full weight of compassion and still offer it. Light against stone. Love against fear. The only way out is through. Seren read it 3 times, then a 4th. The oracle had it wrong. The curse didn't require her death. It required understanding, willingness, a choice made with full knowledge of consequences. But what consequences? And how was she supposed to figure that out before Theron's heart literally crystallized? She fell asleep with the journal clutched to her chest, mind spinning with fragments of prophecy and magic and impossible choices. The next morning brought fresh hell. Seren was summoned to an emergency council meeting. No explanation, just a curt message delivered by a stone-faced guard. She dressed quickly and ran, dread pooling in her stomach. The council chamber was chaos when she arrived, nobles shouting over each other, guards standing at rigid attention, and at the center of it all, Commander Cade holding a blood-stained dispatch. Theron sat at the head of the table, expression carved from ice. He looked worse than last night, gray-skinned, breathing shallow. "What happened?" Seren asked as she took her seat. "The Eastern Territories have erupted into full rebellion," Lord Cassian said flatly. 3 villages burned tax offices last night, killed the collectors. They're calling for the king's head. Saren's blood ran cold. Why now? Because word spread about Marcus Reed's execution. Cade's voice was lethal. They're calling him a martyr, saying the crown murders anyone who fights back against starvation. That's not... He killed someone. They don't care about truth, Lady Ravel interjected smoothly. They care about narrative. And right now, the narrative is that King Theron executes starving men while his voice of mercy cries pretty tears but changes nothing. The accusation hit like a slap. Theron opened her mouth, but Theron spoke first. Enough. His voice cut through the noise. What are our options? Military suppression, Cade said immediately. I can have 3 battalions in the Eastern Territories within 2 days. We crush the rebellion before it spreads. That will kill hundreds, Saren protested. Better hundreds now than thousands later. Cade's eyes were hard. Rebellion is a disease. You cut it out before it infects the whole body. Or we address the cause, Saren argued. They're starving. We already agreed to reduce the grain quota, which they're now using as proof of weakness, Cassian interrupted. Every concession we make, they see as vulnerability. We can't negotiate with people burning buildings. So we just kill them? We protect the kingdom, Ravel said, which is the king's first duty. Saren looked at Theron. His jaw was clenched, fingers drumming that telltale rhythm on the table. But his eyes, they were distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. Your Majesty? The oracle prompted from his corner. He'd been silent until now, watching everything with those dead eyes. Theron blinked slowly. Then Commander Cade with 2 battalions. Authorize force only if they attack first. Otherwise, secure the region and send envoys to negotiate. That's half measures, Cade objected. They'll see it as hesitation. It's strategy. Theron's voice went flat. I won't slaughter my own people without attempting dialogue first. If they reject negotiations and continue violence, then you have authorization to use whatever force necessary. By Shrain Bamatsu, Cade looked like he'd swallowed glass but nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. What about her? Ravel gestured at Saren, the voice of mercy. Shouldn't she go with the envoys, show the people that compassion has a face? Every instinct screamed trap. Ravel didn't make suggestions that helped Saren. No, Theron said immediately. Why not? Ravel's smile was razor sharp. If mercy is our new policy, let's commit to it. Send her to negotiate. Let her see firsthand what happens when you try to reason with angry mobs. She's not trained for She's the voice of mercy, Ravel pressed. Either that title means something or it's theater. Which is it, Your Majesty? The chamber went silent. Every eye turned to Theron. Saren saw the trap close. If he refused, it proved mercy was just performance. If he agreed, he sent her into a war zone where rebels might kill her on sight. I'll go, Saren heard herself say. No, Theron started. You gave me this position. Let me do the job. She met his eyes, willing him to understand. If she backed down now, she'd lose any credibility she'd built. The court would see her as a figurehead. I can do this. His jaw worked. For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse anyway. Commander Cade will provide escort, he said finally. You'll travel with the envoys. But if there's any sign of danger, any at all, you retreat immediately. Understood? Understood. The meeting adjourned. Nobles filed out, whispering behind hands. Saren stood to leave, but Theron caught her wrist. My study. Now. They walked in tense silence. Once inside with the door locked, he rounded on her. What were you thinking? That I couldn't let Ravel win. So you risked your life for optics. His voice rose, control slipping. Do you have any idea what rebels do to people they see as symbols of the crown? About as much idea as I had stepping in front of your blade. She pulled her wrist free. You wanted me to be your conscience, your balance. I can't do that hiding in the palace while people die. You also can't do it if you're dead. Neither can you. The words burst out. You're dying, Theron. The curse is eating you alive and we're no closer to breaking it. Maybe if I do this, If I show real mercy in action instead of just words, it'll buy us time. He stared at her. That's not how the curse works. You don't know that. Neither do I. She moved closer. We're fumbling in the dark here, but Lyrus's journal said light against stone, love against fear. Maybe that means actually taking risks, actually choosing compassion even when it's dangerous. Or maybe it means you die in a burned-out village, and I die of a crystallized heart and Valdron falls into chaos. His voice cracked. I can't lose you, Saren. The admission hung between them, raw, unguarded. You won't, she said quietly. I'm harder to kill than I look. You're also far more reckless than is healthy. Learned from the best. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then his expression shifted, pain flickering across his features. He pressed a hand to his chest, breathing gone ragged. Theron, I'm fine. But he wasn't. He sank into a chair, face gray. Just give me a moment. Saren knelt in front of him, hands hovering uselessly. What can I do? Nothing. It passes. He forced himself to breathe evenly. This is what happens now. Random episodes, pain, the cold spreading. Without thinking, Saren placed her hand over his, the one pressed to his chest. Warmth flooded through her palm, that golden light rising instinctively. Theron's eyes widened. Saren, your hand! Light poured from her skin where they touched, soft, gentle. And where it met him, the color returned to his face, his breathing eased. It's helping, he said, wonder in his voice. She focused on the warmth, willing it stronger. The light grew brighter, wrapping around their joined hands. She could feel the curse inside him, cold and crystalline, fighting against her magic. But the light pushed back, melting edges, creating space. For 30 seconds, maybe a minute, it worked. Then pain exploded through Saren's skull. She gasped, yanking her hand back. The light died. The room spun. What happened? Theron demanded, steadying her. It hurt, like something pushed back. She touched her temple, half expecting blood. The curse. It fought me. His expression darkened. We're not trying that again. It worked, though. For a moment, and then it hurt you. His grip on her shoulders was firm. We find another way. No more experimenting with magic we don't understand. But even as he said it, Saren's mind raced. The light had helped, temporarily, which meant it could work. They just needed to figure out how to sustain it without the backlash. Maybe Lyrus's journal had more answers. Maybe... A knock interrupted her thoughts. Commander Cade entered without waiting for permission. The Eastern envoy departs at dawn, he said curtly. I've assigned 6 guards to the Voice of Mercy. We'll reach the territories in 3 days. I want hourly reports, Theron said. You'll have them. Cade's eyes found Saren. I hope you're ready for this. These people aren't interested in pretty speeches about mercy. Then it's good I'm not planning to make any. Saren stood, forcing confidence she didn't feel. I'm going to listen. Actually hear them. That's more than anyone's done before. Cade's expression was unreadable. We'll see if that's enough. He left. Saren turned back to Theron, found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Come back alive, he said quietly. I will. Promise me. I promise. It felt like a lie even as she said it. The journey east was brutal. 3 days on horseback through terrain that grew progressively more hostile. Burned fields, abandoned villages, faces watching from windows with eyes full of hate. Cade and his guards rode in formation around Saren and the 2 envoys, minor nobles selected for their diplomatic skills but clearly terrified. No one spoke much. The tension was suffocating. On the second night, camped in a clearing, Cade approached Saren's tent. Can we talk? She nodded, stepping outside. The forest around them was dark, alive with sounds that might be animals or might be scouts. I underestimated you, Cade said without preamble. Saren blinked. What? When you first appeared in court, I thought you were a naive girl playing at politics, a distraction the king would discard within weeks. He met her eyes. I was wrong. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I haven't decided which. Why not both? That's what worries me. He glanced toward the tree line. These people we're going to meet tomorrow. They're desperate, angry. They've lost family to starvation and violence. They're not going to care that you mean well. I know. Do you? His voice dropped. Because if this goes wrong, if they decide you're a symbol worth killing, my job is to get you out alive. Even if that means leaving the envoys behind, even if it means burning villages to cover our retreat. The king's orders were clear. Your life takes priority. The weight of that settled over her. Theron had sent her here knowing he'd sacrifice dozens to save her if necessary. That's not mercy, she said quietly. No, it's love. Cade's expression was grim. He's never given orders like that before. Never prioritized one life over strategic necessity. Whatever's between you two, it's making him weak. Or making him human. In this kingdom, those are the same thing. He turned to leave, then paused. The king is dying. You know that, right? I can see it. The way he moves, the pain he tries to hide. Whatever curse he's fighting, it's winning. We're working on it. Work faster. Cade's voice was harsh. Because if he dies and Valdrin falls into chaos, all your mercy won't mean anything. The strong will devour the weak, like they always have. The only difference is the Stone King kept the devouring organized. He left her standing in the dark, words echoing in her mind. Maybe Cade was right. Maybe mercy without power was just sentiment. Maybe she was naive to think she could change anything. But then she thought of Alara, freed because Saren had pushed, of the boy given a second chance, of Marcus Reed dying with someone knowing his full story. Small victories. Fragile, but real. She'd hold on to that. They reached the rebel camp at noon the next day. It wasn't what Saren expected. Not a military operation, just a collection of desperate families camped in a valley. Makeshift shelters, cooking fires, children playing in the dirt. These weren't soldiers. They were survivors. A group of men approached, armed but wary. Their leader was a woman in her 40s, scarred and lean. Her eyes were the hardest things Saren had ever seen. I'm Captain Mara, she said. You're the voice of mercy. Yes, I'm Saren. I don't care about your name. I care why you're here. Saren swallowed. To listen, to understand what you need. What we need is for your king to stop starving us. Mara's voice was flat. Can you do that? The grain quota has been reduced after we burned 3 tax offices and killed 5 collectors. Mara stepped closer. We had to commit murder to get basic compassion. That's not mercy. That's extortion. She wasn't wrong. You're right, Saren said. The envoys behind her hissed in shock. You didn't agree with rebels. The system is broken. People shouldn't have to die to be heard. Mara's eyes narrowed. So fix it. I'm trying, but I need your help. Saren looked past Mara to the camp, the hollow-eyed children, the gaunt faces. Tell me exactly what's happening here. No propaganda, no exaggeration, just truth. For a long moment, Mara studied her. Then, surprisingly, she nodded. Come with me. Cade moved to follow, but Mara held up a hand. Just her. Your guards stay here. Absolutely not, Cade growled. It's okay, Saren said. It's not. Commander. She met his eyes. This is why I came. Let me do it. His jaw clenched, but he stepped back. Saren followed Mara into the camp, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. These people had every reason to hate her. She represented a system that had failed them. Mara led her to a large tent at the camp's center. Inside, a dozen people waited, men and women, young and old, all bearing the marks of hardship. This is the council, Mara said. Tell them your story, and they'll tell you ours. So Saren did. She told them about being marked, about 14 years scrubbing blood from floors, about stepping in front of a blade and accidentally waking a curse, about trying to balance mercy with a king who'd forgotten what compassion looked like. She left nothing out, made herself vulnerable. When she finished, the silence was deafening. Then an old man spoke. You're one of us. What? Marked, powerless, invisible. He leaned forward, The difference is you got lucky, caught the king's attention, but you remember what it's like down here, don't you? Yes, Saren said quietly. I remember. Then you understand why we fight. A younger woman joined in. My daughter was 8 when she starved. 8 years old. I watched her die because we couldn't meet the quota and had nothing left to feed her. Others spoke. Stories of children lost, of villages burned, of guards who took what little they had and called it taxation. Saren listened to all of it, throat tight with unshed tears. These weren't monsters. They were parents, siblings. People pushed past the breaking point. I can't promise everything will change immediately, she said when the stories ended. But I promise I'll fight for you. I'll make the king hear this, all of it. Words, Mara said. We've heard words before. Then let me prove it. Saren stood. Let me take one of you back to the palace, to speak directly to the king and council. Let them hear these stories firsthand. The 10 erupted in argument. Some called her naive, others called it a trap, but Mara held up a hand for silence. I'll go, she said. Captain, someone protested. If it's a trap, I'm dead anyway. Better to die trying something new than starving slowly. Mara's eyes locked on Saren. But if you're lying, if this is some scheme to capture our leadership, I'll make sure you die first. Fair enough. They shook hands. The alliance was fragile, built on desperation and slim hope. But it was something. Saren emerged from the tent to find Cade pacing like a caged wolf. We're leaving, now. We're bringing someone back with us. Captain Mara, a rebel leader? In the palace? He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Absolutely not. The king needs to hear their side, directly. No filters. The king will execute her on sight for rebellion. Then I'll stop him. Saren's voice was steel. The same way I stopped him from executing Lord Garrett. This is what mercy looks like, Commander. Risky, uncomfortable, but necessary. Cade looked ready to argue. Then something in his expression shifted. Resignation, maybe. Or respect. On your head, he muttered. They departed within the hour. Mara rode beside Saren, silent and watchful. The rebels let them leave without incident, though Saren felt eyes tracking them until they were miles away. The journey back was tense. The envoys wouldn't speak to Saren, clearly viewing her actions as treason. Cade remained stone-faced. And Mara studied everything, mapping escape routes and vulnerabilities. On the second night, Mara spoke for the first time since they'd left. Why are you doing this? Saren looked up from the fire. Doing what? Risking everything for people you don't know. You could have stayed in the palace, safe, comfortable. Let us burn and die and starve. Mara's eyes were sharp in the firelight. So why? Because I was you once. Maybe not fighting a rebellion, but invisible, powerless. One decision away from death every day. Saren poked the fire with a stick. Someone gave me a chance. I'm trying to give you the same. The king. Yes. You trust him. It wasn't a question, but Saren answered anyway. I'm learning to. Dangerous thing, trust. Mara settled back against a tree. But I suppose we're all doing dangerous things these days. They reached the palace at dawn on the third day. Saren had sent word ahead, a courier racing through the night to warn Theron she was bringing a rebel leader for negotiations. She had no idea how he'd react. The answer came when they rode through the gates. Theron was waiting in the courtyard, alone. No guards, no council, just him, looking exhausted and furious and relieved all at once. Saren dismounted, and before she could speak, he crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into a brief, fierce embrace. Don't ever do that again, he said against her hair. Do what? Vanish for 3 days into rebel territory. He pulled back, hands still on her shoulders. I thought... He cut himself off, seeming to remember they had an audience. Mara was watching with undisguised interest. You must be the Stone King. Theron's expression shuddered. He released Saren, faced Mara with that cold royal composure. Captain Mara, you're accused of rebellion and murder. Guilty on both counts. Mara didn't flinch. Your tax collectors killed my people first. I just returned the favor. That's not how law works. Your law is starvation dressed up as justice." They stared at each other, king and rebel, stone and fire. Saren stepped between them. "She's here under my invitation, to speak to the council, to tell her side. Her side involves burning crown property and killing my people. And your side involves policies that starve children." Saren's voice was steady. "Both things can be true. That's why we need to talk." Theron's jaw worked. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Order Mara arrested. End this before it began. "Council meets in 1 hour," he said finally. "She'll have her chance to speak. But understand," he looked at Mara, "if this is a distraction while your people attack, I will raze every rebel camp to the ground. If it's a trap to execute me, my people will burn this palace to ash." Mara's smile was cold. "Seems we both have stakes." Theron nodded once and left, spine rigid with controlled fury. Saren exhaled slowly. That could have gone worse. The council meeting was chaos from the start. Half the nobles refused to be in the same room as a rebel. The other half wanted Mara executed immediately. Only Cassian seemed intrigued, watching with calculating eyes. Theron silenced them with a single raised hand. "Captain Mara has been granted safe passage to speak. You'll listen." His voice was ice. "Then we'll decide what happens next." Mara stood in the center of the room, surrounded by hostile faces. But she didn't waver. She told them everything: the starvation, the children dying, the guards who took grain and left villages with nothing, the desperation that drove people to rebellion. She didn't sugarcoat, didn't beg, just laid out the facts with brutal honesty. When she finished, Lord Cassian spoke first. "These are serious accusations, particularly regarding guard conduct. They're true." Commander Cade's voice cut through the room. Everyone turned to stare. "I completed the investigation Serene requested. The village Marcus Reed claimed was burned? It was. Unauthorized action by a rogue squad. They've been arrested." Silence fell like a hammer. "You found proof?" Saren breathed. "Witness testimony, physical evidence. The squad leader confessed under interrogation." Cade's expression was grim. Reed was right. The guard he killed had murdered 37 people. The room erupted. Nobles shouting. Lady Ravel pale with shock. Even the oracle looked surprised. Theron stood, and the noise died immediately. "Then we have a problem," he said quietly. "Because I executed a man for killing his mother's murderer. I upheld a law that protected a criminal and condemned a victim seeking justice." The admission hung there, raw and devastating. Mara's eyes widened. Whatever she'd expected from the Stone King, it wasn't this. "So what now?" she asked. Theron looked at Saren. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked lost. She stood, heart hammering. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. "We change," she said. Not just policy, the entire system. We create a process for appeals, for investigations before executions. We put safeguards in place so people aren't punished for crimes committed in self-defense or under duress." "That would undermine the law's authority," Ravel objected. "The law has no authority if people don't believe in it," Serene countered. "Right now, the Eastern Territories see Valdrin's justice as tyranny. We have a choice: keep crushing them until we've killed everyone who dissents, or actually address their grievances." "Appeasement invites more rebellion," Cade said. "Justice invites loyalty." Saren looked around the room. "These people don't want to fight, they want to survive. Give them that chance, and most will lay down weapons." Cassian tapped his fingers on the table. "It would be expensive. Restructuring the judicial system, compensation for wrongful executions, additional oversight, less expensive than a civil war," Saren said. The oracle's voice slithered into the silence. "An interesting proposal. Though I wonder, is this mercy or is it fear? Are we changing because it's right or because we're afraid of the consequences if we don't?" Saren met his milky gaze. "Does the motivation matter if the result is fewer people dying?" "To the curse, yes." His smile was knife-sharp. "Intent matters in magic. Actions taken from fear feed different outcomes than actions taken from love. Theron's hand went to his chest, an unconscious gesture. The curse. Always the curse. We're changing because it's right, he said firmly. Fear might be part of it, but so is recognition that we've been wrong. He looked at Mara. Your people have legitimate grievances. I'm willing to address them. In exchange, you end the rebellion. Just like that? Mara's skepticism was palpable. No, not just like that. Theron stood, descended from his throne. We'll draft new policies together. You'll have input. We'll create an oversight committee, half Crown appointees, half representatives from the Eastern Territories. Any guard accused of abuse faces investigation by this committee. And if we agree, what stops you from going back on your word once we've disarmed? Me. Saren stepped forward. I'll be on that committee. I'll make sure the promises are kept. Mara studied her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she nodded. I'll take it back to the council. We'll vote. Fair enough. The meeting adjourned. Nobles filed out, whispering furiously. Mara was escorted to guest quarters, guarded but comfortable. Saren and Theron were left alone in the chamber. He sank into his throne, looking utterly drained. That was either the bravest thing I've ever done or the stupidest. Both, Saren said, but it was right. Was it? He rubbed his face. I just admitted to the entire court that I executed an innocent man, that I've been upholding a broken system. I've shown weakness, Saren. Doubt. The exact things a king can't afford. Or the exact things a king needs to show to be trusted. She sat on the throne steps looking up at him. You're not stone anymore, Theron. You're becoming human. That terrifies you, but it's the only way forward. His hand was still pressed to his chest. The curse is worse. Since you left, it's been... He stopped, breathing carefully. Can feel it spreading, faster now. Fear spiked through her. The journal. Did you find anything else? Maybe. He pulled Lyris's journal from his coat. There's a passage near the end. Damaged, but readable. She talks about a ritual, a way to transfer the curse's power back to its source. Which is what? Her bloodline. You. His eyes met hers. The oracle was half right. The curse can be broken through you, but not by killing you. By you accepting it, taking it into yourself willingly. Saren's world tilted. What does that mean? It means the stone in my heart transfers to you. The curse becomes yours instead of mine. I live, you... He cut off. I become the Stone Queen, she finished numbly. Yes, Lyris designed it as a test, to see if her descendants would sacrifice themselves to save Valdron's rulers, to prove that mercy isn't weakness, it's the ultimate strength. That's insane. It's magic. His voice was hollow, and it's the only option I've found. Saren stood on shaking legs. There has to be another way. If there is, we're running out of time to find it. He stood too, and the movement made him wince. I'm dying, Saren. Weeks, maybe days. The Oracle knows it. The Council suspects. Soon everyone will. So what? I just let you transfer your curse to me? Become exactly what you've been fighting against? No, you refuse. You let me die. And you become voice of mercy to whoever takes my throne next. His smile was bitter. Probably Lord Cassian. He's ambitious enough and smart enough. You could work with him. I don't want to work with Cassian. I want... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. What do you want? Theron asked quietly. The truth spilled out before she could stop it. I want you to live. I want us to figure this out together. I want... Her voice broke. I don't want to lose you. The admission hung between them, raw and terrifying. Theron crossed to her slowly, each step careful. When he reached her, he cupped her face in both hands, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I don't want to lose you either, he said, which is why you're not taking this curse. You're going to live a long life doing the work I should have been doing all along, making Valdron better, kinder. You're going to be what I never could. I can't do it without you. You won't have to. Even after I'm gone, everything we've built, the committee, the reforms, the idea that mercy matters, that continues, you make sure of it." He leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers. They stood like that, breathing the same air, and Saren felt the warmth in her chest flare brighter. The light magic. It was responding to proximity, to emotion. An idea sparked. "Theron," she said carefully, "what if we're thinking about this wrong?" "What do you mean?" "The curse transfers through willing sacrifice. That's what the journal said, right?" "Yes." "But what if it's not about one person taking it from another? What if it's about sharing it?" His brow furrowed. "I don't understand. Light against stone, love against fear." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "What if we both accept the curse? Split it between us. My light magic fighting the stone, not to destroy it, but to balance it. That's not... The journal didn't mention... The journal is 500 years old and written by someone in love with your ancestor. Maybe she couldn't imagine a different solution because she was too hurt, too angry. Saren's words came faster. "But we're not them. We're choosing this differently, together." Hope and fear warred in his expression. "It could kill us both. Or save us both. There's no precedent. Then we make one." She grabbed his hands. "I'm not letting you die, and I'm not becoming stone. So we find a third option, the one where stubborn people who don't know when to quit somehow survive against impossible odds." Despite everything, he laughed. It was startled and brief, but real. "You're insane. Learned from the best." He pulled her close, and for a moment they just held each other. Two people standing at the edge of impossible choices. Then the doors burst open. The oracle stood there, staff raised, eyes blazing white with power. "I'm afraid I can't let you try that," he said. And the world exploded into golden light and crushing stone. Saren hit the floor hard, breath knocked from her lungs. Above her, the oracle's staff blazed with sickly yellow light, nothing like the warm gold of her own magic. This was something older, corrupted. Theron was already moving, yanking Saren behind him as stone erupted from the marble beneath their feet. Massive shards, jagged and deadly, shooting toward the oracle like spears. The old man batted them aside with a casual flick of his staff. "Impressive, Your Majesty. The curse gives you such wonderful control over stone now. Pity it's also killing you." "What are you doing?" Theron's voice was deadly calm, preventing a catastrophic mistake. The oracle stepped into the chamber and the doors slammed shut behind him. Runes flared to life across the walls, ancient symbols Saren recognized from the throne room floor. A binding circle. They were trapped. "You cannot share the curse. It doesn't work that way." "You don't know that," Serene said, forcing herself to stand despite her shaking legs. "Oh, but I do." Those milky eyes fixed on her. "I've studied this curse for 40 years, longer than you've been alive. I know every nuance, every possibility, and splitting it between two people? That doesn't break it. It amplifies it. You'd both be dead within hours." Theron's hand found Saren's, squeezed once. "Then why stop us? If it would kill us both, isn't that what you want? To study the curse's full power?" The oracle's smile was terrible. "I want to study it, yes, but I need it intact, functioning, and for that, I need one of you to complete the proper ritual." "The one where I die and he lives," Saren said flatly. "The one where you fulfill your bloodline's purpose." Lyris created this curse knowing her descendants would one day face this choice. She built in the mechanism for breaking it, willing sacrifice. Your life for his. Light consumed by stone, then transformed into something new. The oracle's voice took on an edge of fanaticism. "It's beautiful, elegant, the perfect magical symmetry." "It's murder," Saren spat. "It's destiny." He raised his staff and Saren felt pressure building in the air. "Magic, ancient and wrong. I've waited too long for this moment. I won't let you ruin it with your ignorant tampering." Golden light exploded from Saren's hands without conscious thought. Pure instinct. It crashed into the oracle's yellow magic, and where they met, the air screamed. The oracle staggered, surprise flickering across his face. "Interesting. You're stronger than I thought. Good, Saren gasped. The magic was pouring out of her now, uncontrolled. It hurt, like her blood was on fire. But she held on. Because I'm not dying for your research project. Theron moved. While the oracle was focused on Saren's light, the king raised both hands. The marble floor responded, cracking open. Stone tendrils whipped upward, wrapping around the oracle's legs, his waist climbing higher. Clever, the oracle wheezed. But the curse makes you strong, doesn't it? Every time you use it, every time you draw on stone, it spreads faster. You're killing yourself to save her. Theron's face was gray, veins standing out on his neck. Worth it. The oracle laughed, a wet, rasping sound. Young love, how tedious. He slammed his staff down, and the yellow magic detonated outward. Saren was thrown backward, hitting the wall hard enough to see stars. Theron's stone prison shattered. The king collapsed, gasping, one hand clutching his chest. Theron! Saren scrambled toward him. I'm okay. But he wasn't. His skin had gone ashen, lips tinged blue. The curse was eating him alive. The oracle stepped over the broken stone, barely winded. This is why I'm acting now. The curse is reaching its conclusion. Within days, the king will be nothing but a statue. Beautiful in its way, but useless for my purposes. I need the transfer to happen while he still has enough life force to make it meaningful. You're insane, Saren said. I'm a scholar. There's a difference. He pointed his staff at her. Now, you have a choice. Perform the ritual willingly, give the boy king a few more decades of life, and I'll let Captain Mara and her rebels go free. I'll even advocate for the reforms you proposed. Your death will mean something. Or, Theron rasped, or I kill you both right now. The curse consumes itself, and I settle for studying the residual magic. Less elegant, but still valuable. The staff's tip glowed brighter. Decide quickly. My patience has limits. Saren's mind raced. The oracle was right about one thing. Theron was dying. She could feel it in the way he leaned against her, in the shallow rasp of his breathing. They had minutes, maybe less, but she'd read Lyris's journal, studied the passages about light and stone, love and fear, and one thing kept echoing in her memory. The only way out is through. What if, Serene said slowly, there's a fourth option? The oracle's eyes narrowed. There isn't. You said the curse needs willing sacrifice, light consumed by stone. But what if it's not about one consuming the other? She looked at Theron, saw understanding dawn in his eyes. What if we don't fight the curse? What if we complete it? That's what I'm trying to... Not with death, with acceptance. Saren's voice grew stronger. Lyris cursed King Theron I because he couldn't balance cruelty with compassion. But we can. We've been doing it. The curse responds to mercy shown with understanding, right? It weakens when Theron makes compassionate choices while knowing the strategic cost. And strengthens when he shows mercy from fear, the oracle finished, understanding where she was going. But that's not enough to break it. The curse is too far advanced. Because we've been trying to break it. Saren stood, pulling Theron up with her. He swayed, but held steady. What if we let it finish? Let the transformation complete, but together. Both of us accepting what we are. Stone and light, justice and mercy. Not fighting, not resisting, just balanced. The oracle stared at her. That's not how magic works. You don't know that. You've studied the curse, but you've never seen it completed. You've never seen what happens when someone actually accepts it instead of fighting. She grabbed Theron's hand. We're doing it, right now. You'll die, the oracle said flatly. Maybe, but at least we're choosing it. Saren looked at Theron. Together? His smile was pained but real. Together. They clasped hands, and Saren reached for that warm place in her chest, the golden light she'd spent 14 years hiding. She pulled it forward, let it pour through her skin. It wrapped around their joined hands, brilliant and alive. Theron closed his eyes, and she felt him do the same thing, reaching for the curse, for the cold stone in his heart. Instead of fighting it, he accepted it, opened himself to it. The stone spread up his arms, visible beneath his skin, dark veins of crystalline rock. No. Theron started to pull back. Don't. His grip tightened. Trust me. Trust us. She did. She let the light pour into him, and the stone pour into her. Where they met, something shifted. The oracle was shouting something, but Saren couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. The chamber filled with light and shadow, golden and gray, swirling together like a storm. Pain crashed through her chest. The stone was cold, so cold, like ice crystallizing around her heart. She gasped, and Theron gasped with her. They were locked together now, the magic binding them. But something was happening. The light wasn't being consumed by the stone, it was melting it. Slowly. And the stone wasn't crushing the light, it was giving it form, structure, balance. Lyris's voice seemed to echo through the magic, though Saren knew that was impossible. The seer had been dead for 500 years. Light against stone, love against fear. The only way out is through. Understanding crashed over her. Through didn't mean defeating, it meant accepting, integrating, becoming something new. The curse wasn't meant to be broken. It was meant to transform. Saren's eyes met Theron's, and she saw the same realization there. The curse was a test, not of strength, but of acceptance. Could they hold both mercy and justice, compassion and strategy, light and stone? Yes, she breathed. The magic detonated. When Saren opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor. Theron was beside her, breathing hard but alive. The oracle stood frozen, staff dropped, staring at them with something that looked like horror. "What did you do?" he whispered. Saren sat up carefully. Her chest ached, but the pain was different now. Not the cold of spreading stone, but a strange warmth. She looked at her hands. Thin lines of gold and gray traced patterns across her skin, like veins but visible on the surface. Light and stone, woven together. Theron had the same marks. They ran up his arms, across his neck, visible at the edge of his collar. But his skin was no longer gray. Color had returned to his face. "We completed it," Theron said, wonder in his voice. "We actually completed it. That's impossible." The oracle stumbled forward. "The curse should have killed you, both of you. You can't rewrite 500 years of magic." "We didn't rewrite it." Saren stood and strength flooded through her, more than she'd ever felt before. "We fulfilled it." Lyris wanted her descendants to show Valdron's kings what real mercy looked like. Well, we did. Mercy isn't weakness or strength, it's both. And justice isn't cruelty or compassion, it's both. The marks on her skin pulsed with light. She could feel the magic now, not just her own golden warmth, but the stone too. The weight and stability of it. The curse hadn't transferred from Theron to her. It had been split and transformed into something else entirely. Shared power, shared responsibility. "You're bound now," the oracle said, and there was something like grief in his voice. "The curse isn't broken, it's just distributed. You'll have to maintain that balance forever. If one of you dies, the other follows. If you ever choose cruelty without compassion, or compassion without strategy, we die together," Theron finished. He looked at Saren. "I can live with that." "So can I." The oracle's face twisted with fury. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I spent decades. You spent decades trying to control something that was never yours to control," Saren said. The light in her veins brightened. This curse was about choice, free will, love, and you turned it into a research project. "I could have unlocked such power. You would have unlocked nothing but death." Theron's voice was cold. "Guards!" The doors burst open. Commander Cade and 6 soldiers rushed in, weapons drawn. "Arrest High Oracle Morin," Theron commanded. "Charges are conspiracy, magical manipulation, and attempted murder of the crown." The oracle raised his staff, but Serene was faster. Golden light wrapped around him, gentle but unbreakable. The staff fell from his hands. "You can't!" he gasped. "I'm the oracle. I see the future." "Then you should have seen this coming," Theron said. Cade's men dragged him away, still protesting. His voice faded into the corridor. When they were alone, Saren's legs gave out. Theron caught her, and they sank to the floor together, backs against the wall. That was the stupidest thing we've ever done, Theron said. It worked, though. Barely. He examined the marks on his hands. We're magically bound for life. If you die, I die. Romantic. Despite everything, he laughed. That's one word for it. He sobered. Are you okay? Really? Saren took inventory. The pain in her chest had faded to a dull ache. The magic thrummed through her veins, warm and cool, light and stone, balanced. It felt right. I think so. You? The curse isn't spreading anymore. I can breathe without it feeling like my ribs are cracking. So, improvement. He turned to look at her. We're going to have to figure out what this means, these marks, this binding. Later, Saren said. Right now, I just want to sit here and process the fact that we're not dead. Fair. They sat in silence for a moment, shoulders pressed together. Then Theron spoke quietly. When the Oracle said we'd die together if one of us dies, that scared you. It wasn't a question. Saren nodded anyway. Me too, he admitted, but also, he struggled for words. Also, it felt right, like we were already heading that direction anyway. Saren's breath caught. What? I care about you, Saren, more than I've cared about anyone in, maybe ever. And I think you care about me too, though I have no idea why, given that I've been a complete bastard for most of my life. You're getting better, she said, and her voice came out softer than intended. He smiled. Because of you. You made me remember that there's more to ruling than strategy and fear. You showed me mercy wasn't weakness. His expression turned serious. So, yeah, being magically bound to you for life? Terrifying. But also, I can't think of anyone else I'd rather be bound to. Saren's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. The marks on her skin pulsed warmer. I care about you too, she said. Even though you're stubborn and emotionally constipated and you make terrible decisions when you're trying to be strategic. Emotionally constipated? You went 17 years without showing mercy because you were scared of dying. That's the definition of emotionally constipated. I was being practical. You were being terrified. Both can be true. He shifted so he could see her better. But you're right. I was scared. Of the curse. Of weakness. Of caring about anything more than power. His hand found hers, fingers threading together. You terrify me, Saren. Because you make me want to be better. To choose compassion even when it's strategically stupid. And that goes against every survival instinct I've built over 17 years. Good, Saren said. Because you terrify me too. You make me want to be more than just the girl scrubbing floors. You make me think I could actually change things. And that's... Her voice cracked. That's the most frightening thing anyone's ever given me. Hope. They were very close now. Close enough that Saren could count the gray flecks in his eyes. Close enough to see her own reflection there. We're a disaster, Theron murmured. The worst. Magically bound to each other, reforming an entire kingdom, fighting 500 years of precedent. Terrifying. Completely. His free hand came up to cup her face. And I wouldn't change a thing. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious. Saren's eyes drifted closed, and the marks on her skin flared brilliant gold. She could feel Theron's magic responding, the cool stone warming under her touch. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. The air around them shimmered with residual magic. That was... Theron started. The doors burst open again. This time it was Captain Mara, flanked by 2 guards who looked extremely uncomfortable about escorting a rebel leader through the palace. Sorry to interrupt, Mara said, though her expression suggested she wasn't sorry at all. But I just watched your guards drag the Oracle away in chains, and I need to know if we still have a deal. Saren scrambled to her feet, Theron right behind her. They must look a mess. Rumpled clothes, glowing magical marks, sitting on the floor like teenagers. We still have a deal, Sam, Theron said, composure sliding back into place. The reforms stand. The committee will be established, and I'm issuing a full pardon for you and your people, conditional on the rebellion ending. Mara's eyes narrowed. Just like that? After we burned tax offices and killed collectors? Those collectors were breaking the law, Saren said. Cade found proof. The guard Marcus Reed killed had murdered civilians. Others had been extorting villages, taking more than the quota and pocketing the difference. Your rebellion exposed corruption we didn't know existed. Or that you chose not to see, Mara said bluntly. Yes, Theron agreed, and Mara blinked in surprise. We chose not to see. It was easier to believe the system worked than to examine it closely. You forced our hand, and for that, he took a breath. I apologize. On behalf of the crown, we failed you. The silence that followed was profound. Mara stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Did the Stone King just apologize to a rebel? She finally said. Former rebel, Saren corrected. If you accept the deal. Mara's jaw worked. My council needs to vote, but yeah, I think they'll accept. Hard to keep fighting when the enemy starts actually addressing your grievances. She glanced between them, taking in the magical marks, the way they stood close together. You two are different than when I met you 3 days ago. We had a breakthrough, Saren said. More like a breakdown, Theron muttered. Both. Saren elbowed him. But we figured some things out, about balance, about mercy and justice working together instead of fighting. Mara snorted. You're going to need to. The Eastern Territories aren't the only region with grievances. Word's already spreading about the reforms. Other provinces are going to demand the same treatment. Good, Theron said. Let them. We'll address each one. That'll take years, decades maybe. Then we'd better get started. He looked at Saren. Together. The word hung there, layered with meaning. Mara shook her head slowly. I came here expecting to die. Instead, I'm watching the Stone King turn into an actual human being. This is the weirdest day of my life. Join the club, Saren said. After Mara left, Theron called an emergency council meeting. The same nobles who'd witnessed the Oracle's arrest were summoned, along with Commander Cade and Lord Cassian. They filed in looking nervous. No one knew what to make of the Oracle's fall, or the strange marks now visible on both the king and his voice of mercy. Theron didn't make them wait. The curse is resolved, he announced. Saren and I have found a way to balance its power. We're both alive, both functional, and we're moving forward with the reforms discussed earlier. Your Majesty, Ravel said carefully, the marks on your skin, what are they? A reminder, Theron said, that mercy and justice must exist together. That compassion without strategy is foolish, but strategy without compassion is monstrous. These marks ensure we never forget that balance. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. Cassian leaned forward. And the Oracle? What did he do to warrant arrest? He attempted to manipulate the curse for his own purposes, Saren said. He wanted to use it as a weapon, to study its power at the cost of lives. He'll stand trial, Theron added, publicly. Every charge laid out, every manipulation exposed. Valdrin will see that no one, not even those who claim to see the future, is above the law. Cade spoke up. The Eastern Territories have agreed to a ceasefire. Captain Mara is taking the terms back to her council. If they accept, the rebellion ends. When they accept, Saren corrected, they'll accept. You seem certain, Ravel said. I am, because we're not offering empty promises. We're offering real change, oversight, accountability, the things they've been fighting for. Saren met Ravel's eyes. And we're going to deliver every single reform, or we die trying. The marks on her skin pulsed, as if emphasizing the point. Quite literally, it seems, Cassian murmured. He looked intrigued rather than horrified. This binding, it's permanent? Yes, Theron said. And if one of you dies, we both die. So we have a vested interest in keeping each other alive. Theron's tone was dry. I'd say that makes us more invested in Valdron's stability than any ruler in history. Can't exactly wage reckless wars or make suicidal decisions when your advisor dies with you. A ripple of understanding moved through the council. The binding wasn't just magical, it was political. A guarantee that the king would never again rule with cruelty unchecked, because his voice of mercy was literally tied to his survival. Clever, Cassian said. Dangerous, but clever. It's insane, Cade said flatly. You've shackled yourself to... He stopped, seeming to realize he was about to insult Saren in front of everyone. To the only person brave enough to stop me from executing people for compassion, Theron finished. Yes, that was the point. Ravel was watching with hooded eyes. The court will talk. They'll say you've been enchanted, compromised. Let them talk, Saren said. Actions will speak louder. When the Eastern territories see peace and full bellies instead of hangings, when other provinces get the same fair treatment, when the judicial system actually functions with oversight, they'll stop talking about magic and start talking about results. And if the results don't come, Ravel pressed. Then we failed, Theron said simply, and we'll deal with the consequences, but we're not going back to the old way. The Stone King is dead. What comes next is... He glanced at Saren. Something new. The council adjourned with more questions than answers, but no one tried to challenge the changes directly. They were too shocked, too uncertain. Serene and Theron remained in the chamber after everyone left. That went better than expected, Saren said. They're terrified and confused. Give them a few days to process, then the real pushback will start. Theron rubbed his face. Ravel will dig for weaknesses. Cassian will look for ways to exploit the binding for political gain, and we still have to actually deliver on the reforms. So, a normal Tuesday in Valdron politics? He huffed a laugh. I suppose so. He looked at her seriously. This is going to be hard, Saren. Harder than anything we've done so far. Changing an entire kingdom's judicial system, restructuring power, addressing centuries of inequality. People will resist, fight us, try to break us. I know, and we're bound together now. Whatever happens to one of us happens to both. No running, no backing out. I know that too. She stepped closer. I'm not scared of the work, Theron, or the danger. I'm scared of failing, of not being good enough to actually make a difference. You've already made a difference. You stopped an execution that would have been a mistake. You gave voice to people who had none. You convinced me, the Stone King, to show mercy. His hands found her shoulders. If you can do that, you can handle anything. We can handle anything, she corrected. Together, remember? Together, he agreed. The marks on their skin pulsed in unison, gold and gray, light and stone, perfectly balanced. Over the next week, everything changed. The oracle was tried publicly, evidence of his manipulation laid out for all to see, how he'd orchestrated events to activate the curse, how he'd planned to use Saren's death for his research, how he'd been feeding Theron information designed to make him more cruel and less merciful. The court watched in stunned silence as their spiritual advisor was revealed as a manipulator. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, stripped of his title and holdings. No execution. Saren had argued for that. Death was too easy. Let him live, knowing he'd failed. Captain Mara returned on the fourth day with news that the Eastern Council had voted to accept the peace terms. The rebellion was over. Saren wept when she heard. Theron pretended not to notice, but handed her his handkerchief. The Oversight Committee was established, half Crown appointees, half representatives from across Valdron's territories. Their first session was chaotic, with arguments about jurisdiction and authority, but they worked through it. Slowly, painfully, they worked through it. Saren attended every session, argued for the voiceless, pushed back when strategy became cruelty. The marks on her skin glowed brighter with each battle won. Theron reformed the tax code, creating graduated quotas based on actual harvest yields rather than arbitrary numbers. Provinces that had been starving began to recover. It wasn't fast. It wasn't smooth. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when Saren wanted to scream at the sheer stubbornness of people clinging to the old ways. But there was also progress. A month after the Oracle's arrest, the first appeal under the new judicial system was heard. A woman condemned for theft had her case reviewed, new evidence presented, and her sentence reduced to restitution instead of execution. Small victory, but victory nonetheless. Commander Cade approached Saren after that session, expression unreadable. "You were right," he said without preamble. "About what?" "Mercy having limits, but those limits being flexible. Strategic compassion." He looked uncomfortable, like the words tasted strange. I didn't believe it could work, but it's working. Not everywhere yet, not perfectly. No, but better than before. He nodded once and left. Saren stood there, slightly stunned. Cade's respect felt like a milestone. That night, she and Theron sat in his private study, reviewing proposals for the next round of reforms. The work was endless, exhausting. Theron rubbed his eyes, looking worn. We should stop, sleep. 5 more minutes. This proposal about prison reform can wait until tomorrow. He pulled the document from her hands. You're running yourself into the ground. So are you. Yes, well, at least if I collapse, you collapse with me. Magical binding and all. His smile was tired, though I'd rather neither of us collapse. Saren leaned back in her chair, studying him. The marks on his skin had settled into something almost elegant, thin lines of gray and gold that caught the light. They matched hers. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Binding yourself to me? Every day. At her expression, he laughed. I'm joking. Mostly. He grew serious. No, I don't regret it. He gestured at the reforms, the documents, everything they were building. This is the first time I've felt like I'm actually doing something that matters, not just maintaining power, not just surviving, actually making Valdrin better. We still have so far to go. I know, but we're going there together, and that makes it... He paused, searching for words. Bearable. Possible, even. The warmth in Saren's chest had nothing to do with magic. I love you, she said. The words slipped out before she could think them through. Theron went very still. What? I love you, she repeated, and this time it was deliberate. I've been trying not to. It seemed complicated and dangerous and really inconvenient given that we're trying to reform a kingdom. But I do. I love you. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he crossed the distance between them, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her like she was air and he was drowning. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you too, he said against her hair. Have for weeks, maybe longer. I didn't know how to say it without sounding like an idiot. You just did. And I sounded like an idiot. A little, she admitted, but a sincere idiot. He laughed, and it was the freest sound she'd ever heard from him. They stood like that, wrapped in each other, while the marks on their skin glowed bright enough to light the room. Outside, Valdrin was changing, slowly, painfully, but changing. And inside, 2 people who'd been taught that mercy was weakness and love was death were proving that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was choose both. 3 months later, Saren stood in the Eastern Territories for the first time since brokering peace. The village of Greystone, the same place Marcus Reed had died trying to protect, was unrecognizable. New construction everywhere. Fields replanted. Children playing in streets that had been burned out husks just seasons ago. And in the center of town, a monument, simple stone carved with names, 37 of them. The villagers who'd died in the unauthorized burning. Marcus Reed's name was there too, not as a criminal, as a son who'd tried to save his home. It's not enough, Captain Mara said beside her. She'd become Saren's unofficial guide through the territories, translating between crown policy and ground-level reality. A monument doesn't bring anyone back. No, Saren agreed, but it says we remember. We acknowledge the harm done. That matters. Mara grunted, which Saren had learned was her version of reluctant agreement. They were here for the opening of the first regional courthouse, part of the judicial reforms. Local magistrates trained in the new oversight procedures would hear cases before they escalated to executions. Appeals would be standard, not exceptional. Revolutionary, terrifying, necessary. The ceremony was small. Just locals, a few crown representatives, and Theron, who'd insisted on coming despite the security risks. You're going to give Cade a heart attack, Saren had told him that morning. Good, keeps him sharp. But Theron's hand had found hers, squeezed once. The marks on their skin pulsed in unison. They'd learned to read each other through the binding. Fear, determination, exhaustion, hope. Right now, nervous excitement. We're really doing this, she'd said. We really are. The courthouse was modest, wood and stone, nothing fancy, but it had a proper dock for the accused, seats for witnesses, a place for evidence to be presented, a place where truth could be heard. The local magistrate, a weathered woman named Hannah, who'd been a village elder before the reforms, gave a short speech about justice and mercy working together. Then she looked directly at Theron. "We didn't trust you at first," she said bluntly. "The Stone King coming here, making promises, we thought it was lies, performance." Theron's expression remained neutral, but Saren felt tension spike through the binding. "But you kept your word," Hannah continued. "The quota was reduced. Aid arrived. The guards who burned our village were punished. And this courthouse," she gestured around, "this says our voices matter. Our justice matters, not just the crown's." She paused, then did something that made the entire crowd gasp. She bowed. To Theron and Saren both. "Thank you," she said simply. The crowd erupted into cautious applause. Not enthusiastic. These people had been betrayed too many times to trust easily. But real, genuine. Saren's throat tightened. Beside her, Theron's hand found hers again. His fingers trembled slightly. Later, after the ceremony, they walked through Greystone's market. People stared but didn't flee. Some even nodded respectfully. "This is weird," Theron muttered. "What is?" "People not looking at me like I'm about to execute them." "Get used to it." Saren squeezed his hand. "This is what happens when you actually help instead of just rule." A child, maybe 6 years old, ran up to them. She had flowers in her hands, wildflowers picked from the replanted fields. "For you," she said shyly, offering them to Saren. "Mama says you're the voice of mercy. You saved people." Saren knelt, taking the flowers carefully. "What's your name?" "Elara." Of course it was. Saren's chest ached. "That's a beautiful name." "Mama named me after her friend who died. She says I'm supposed to remember that good people fight for what's right." The girl looked at Theron. "Are you really the Stone King?" Theron crouched beside Saren. Up close, the marks on his skin were visible, golden veins threading through gray. "I was," he said. "Now I'm just Theron. You don't look scary." "I'm trying not to be anymore." The girl considered this, then handed him a single flower from her bouquet. "Okay, you can have one too." After she ran off, Theron stood there holding a crushed wildflower like it was made of glass. "Are you crying?" Saren asked softly. "Shut up." "You are." "The king is crying." "The former Stone King," he corrected, voice rough. "And I'm not crying. I have something in my eye." "Both eyes?" "Yes, a condition, very serious." He wiped his face roughly. "Can we go before I completely lose whatever dignity I have left?" But he kept the flower. Saren saw him tuck it carefully into his coat pocket. The real crisis came 2 weeks later. Lord Cassian requested an emergency council meeting. Saren arrived to find half the nobles already there, expressions grim. "What happened?" she asked, sliding into her seat beside Theron. "Border incident with Keldar," Cassian said without preamble. 3 of our villages raided, livestock stolen, 2 people killed." Saren's stomach dropped. Keldar was their western neighbor, historically aggressive, always testing Valdron's borders. "Do we know why?" Theron asked. "Because they think we're weak," this from Lord Brennan, whose son Saren had saved months ago. He still didn't like her, but he'd stopped actively trying to undermine her. Progress. Word spread about the reforms, about mercy and oversight and justice. Keldar's king thinks we've gone soft. "So we prove we haven't," Commander Cade said. Immediate military response. Hit 3 of their villages in retaliation. Show them weakness has consequences. "That's not strategy, that's escalation," Saren argued. "We hit them. They hit us harder. We're in a full border war within weeks." "Then what do you suggest?" Cade's tone was sharp. "We let them raid with impunity? That's actual weakness." "No, we respond, but smartly." Saren looked at Theron. "We send envoys first. Make it clear the raids were unacceptable and we're prepared to defend our borders. Give them a chance to back down before violence. And if they don't back down, Ravel asked. Then we respond with precision. Not indiscriminate retaliation, targeted action against the raiders specifically. Show we're strong, but controlled. That's naive, Brennan said. Keldar doesn't respect controlled responses. They respect force. The argument devolved into shouting. Half the council wanted immediate military action. The other half, smaller but growing, supported diplomatic attempts first. Theron sat silent through it all, fingers drumming on the table. That meant he was thinking, weighing options. Finally, he raised a hand. Silence fell. We try Saren's approach, he said. Send envoys, make our position clear. Give Keldar 48 hours to respond. And if they refuse, Cade pressed, then we respond militarily, but precisely, as Saren suggested. We target the raiders. We fortify the border. We show strength without descending into total war. Theron's voice was steel. We're trying to build something different here. That doesn't mean we're defenseless. It means we don't default to violence when other options exist. Cade looked ready to argue, but something in Theron's expression stopped him. The king wasn't asking, he was commanding. Yes, your majesty, Cade said finally. The envoys left that afternoon. 48 hours of waiting began. Saren couldn't sleep. She paced her chambers, mind-spinning worst-case scenarios. What if Keldar attacked the envoys? What if this escalated into war? What if her insistence on diplomacy got people killed? A knock came near midnight. Theron, looking equally sleepless. Can't stop thinking either, he asked. No. She let him in. What if I'm wrong? What if Cade's right and we should have just hit them hard and fast? Then we adapt. He settled on the couch and she joined him. But you're not wrong. We have to at least try. People could die while we're trying. People could die either way. His arm went around her shoulders, pulling her close. War isn't clean, Saren. There's no perfect solution where everyone survives. We just have to make the best choice we can with the information we have. That's terrifying. Welcome to ruling. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But we're doing it together. That helps. The marks on their skin pulsed warm. Through the binding, Saren felt his fear matching hers, but also his determination, his belief that this was right. She leaned into him, letting his steady heartbeat calm her racing thoughts. I love you, she said quietly. I love you too. Even when you're making my life complicated with your insistence on diplomacy. Especially then. Especially then, he agreed. The response came 36 hours later. Keldar's king agreed to a border summit. He claimed the raids were unauthorized actions by rogue elements, not sanctioned attacks. Probably a lie, but a lie that gave both kingdoms a way to de-escalate. The summit was tense. Keldar's king, an old warrior named Aldrich, tested Theron constantly, probing for weakness. Saren watched it happen, watched Aldrich push, and watched Theron hold firm. Not with threats, not with shows of force, just calm, steady refusal to be intimidated. You've changed, Aldrich said at one point. The Stone King I knew would have responded to raids with executions. The Stone King is dead, Theron said simply. I'm what comes after. Weakness comes after. Strength comes after, just a different kind. Theron gestured to Saren. My voice of mercy suggested diplomacy first. Not because we're afraid of war, but because we're confident enough to choose alternatives. Aldrich's eyes narrowed. The marked girl. I've heard stories. Then you know she's more dangerous than she looks, Theron said, and Saren felt a spike of affection through the binding. She convinced me to show mercy. If she can do that, imagine what else she's capable of. It was posturing, political theater, but it worked. They negotiated a border agreement, increased patrols on both sides, reparations for the raided villages, and a trade treaty that gave both kingdoms incentive to maintain peace. Not perfect, but functional. On the ride back to Valdron's capital, Commander Cade rode alongside their carriage. That was well done, Your Majesty, he said grudgingly. Thanks, Saren. It was her strategy. Cade's eyes found Saren through the window. Then thank you. I was wrong. Diplomacy worked. From Cade, that was practically a declaration of eternal loyalty, but the real test came a month later. A case reached the oversight committee that had everyone divided. A noble, Lord Garrett's cousin, actually, was accused of murdering his wife. The evidence was compelling. Witnesses, blood. The man had even confessed initially, then recanted, claiming coercion. Under the old system, he would have been executed within days. Under the new one, the case had to be thoroughly investigated. The committee heard testimony for 3 weeks. Saren attended every session, watching evidence pile up. The man was guilty. Clearly, obviously guilty. But his defense raised questions about his mental state. About a head injury sustained years ago that had changed his personality. About whether he truly understood what he'd done. This is exactly what the old system was designed to prevent, Lady Ravel said during a private council meeting. Endless deliberation while a murderer walks free. He's not walking free, he's in custody, Saren countered. And we're determining whether execution is appropriate or if there are mitigating factors. He killed his wife. What mitigation is there? Intent, capacity, understanding. Saren pulled out medical reports. 3 physicians examined him. All agree he has significant brain damage affecting judgment and impulse control. He's dangerous, yes, but is he criminally responsible the same way a healthy person would be? So we just let him go? Brennan demanded. No, we sentence him to permanent confinement in a secure facility. He's removed from society, unable to hurt anyone else. But we don't execute someone who might not be mentally competent to stand trial. The council erupted. Half agreed with Saren, half thought she was being dangerously soft. Theron let the argument rage for 10 minutes before calling for silence. The Oversight Committee's recommendation stands, he said. Life confinement, not execution. We're establishing precedent that mental competency matters in sentencing. This will be exploited, Ravel warned. Every criminal will claim brain damage to avoid execution. Then we develop better evaluation processes, Serene said. We don't abandon mercy because it might be complicated. The decision was announced publicly. The reaction was mixed. Some praised the nuance. Others called it weakness. But something interesting happened. Other kingdoms started watching, sending observers to Valdrin's courts, asking about the oversight process. Change was spreading. 6 months after the curse was resolved, Saren stood in the throne room, the same place where she'd stepped in front of Theron's blade. But this time, the room was filled with people celebrating. Not an execution. A wedding. Her wedding. She'd argued against the spectacle. We don't need a big ceremony. We're already magically bound. Legally bound is different, Theron had countered. And politically it matters. Showing the kingdom that the voice of mercy and the king are united, that matters. So here she was, wearing a dress that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life as a servant, about to marry the man she'd once watched execute people without flinching. The ceremony was a blend of old and new, traditional vows, but with additions Saren had insisted on. Promises to rule with both mercy and justice, to listen to those without voices, to choose compassion even when it was hard. When Theron said, "I do," the marks on his skin glowed golden. When Saren did the same, hers answered in shimmering gray. The kingdom's bishop declared them married, and the crowd erupted in applause. "Hello, wife," Theron murmured as they processed down the aisle. "Hello, husband," Saren replied, and couldn't stop grinning. The reception was political necessity dressed as celebration. Nobles from across Valdron, representatives from the Eastern Territories, even an envoy from Keldar. Captain Mara, dressed in formal attire that she clearly hated, raised a toast. To the king who learned mercy and the servant who taught it to him. May they rule long and annoy their enemies frequently. The crowd laughed. Saren caught Theron's eye and saw him fighting a smile. Later, dancing with her husband, Saren looked around the throne room, saw the faces that had once stared at her with contempt now showing respect, saw the space where she'd once been invisible now holding her as its center. "What are you thinking?" Theron asked. "That a year ago I was scrubbing blood from these floors. Now I'm dancing on them. It's surreal. Regret stepping in front of my blade? Not even a little." She leaned closer. "Though I do sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't. If I just stayed invisible. I'd probably be a statue by now. The kingdom would be in chaos, and you'd still be scrubbing floors wondering if you could have made a difference. His arms tightened around her. I'm glad you were brave enough to try. I'm glad you were brave enough to let me. They swayed together, the marks on their skin casting gentle light across the marble. 1 year later, Saren stood before a crowd of newly trained magistrates, men and women from every corner of Valdron, about to be deployed to regional courts. You're going to make mistakes, she told them. You're going to face cases where there's no clear right answer, where mercy and justice seem to contradict each other, where every option feels wrong. She paused, looking at their young, nervous faces. When that happens, remember this: justice without mercy is cruelty. Mercy without justice is chaos. Your job is to find the balance, to listen fully before deciding, to weigh consequences against compassion, to be brave enough to choose what's right instead of what's easy. She held up her hand, showing the marks that had become her symbol. These marks remind me every day that I'm bound to something larger than myself. You're bound too, to the law, yes, but more importantly, to the people that law is meant to protect. Never forget that behind every case is a person, a story, a life that matters. Even criminals? One magistrate asked. Especially criminals, Saren said. Because if we only extend mercy to people we like, it's not really mercy. It's favoritism. Real compassion means seeing humanity even in those who've done terrible things. Doesn't mean excusing their actions, just means remembering they're human. The magistrates dispersed to their posts. Serene watched them go, hoping she'd said the right things, hoping they'd be better than she was at navigating impossible choices. They'll be fine, Theron said, joining her. You trained them well. I fumbled my way through training them. That too, but they learned anyway. He took her hand and the marks pulsed warm. The Eastern Territories reported 0 executions this quarter. All cases were resolved through the oversight process. That's, Saren's breath caught. That's incredible. That's what you built. What we built. He pulled her close. Valdron isn't perfect. We're still dealing with corruption and abuse and people who resist change, but we're better than we were. And we're still improving. Sometimes I worry it's not enough, that we're moving too slowly. We're moving at the speed change actually happens, not the speed we wish it would. He kissed her forehead. Give it time. Give people time. They're learning to trust again. That doesn't happen overnight. 2 years after stepping in front of the blade, Saren received a letter. It was from Elara, Marcus Reed's sister. She'd moved to the capital, was training as a magistrate herself. The letter was short. You kept your promise. You investigated. You changed things. My brother died, but his death meant something because you made sure of it. Thank you. Saren read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Good news or bad? Theron asked, finding her in their private chambers. Both. She showed him the letter. She's thanking me, but Marcus is still dead. I couldn't save him. No, but you made sure his death exposed the rot in the system. You made sure it mattered. Theron sat beside her. You can't save everyone, Saren. We've learned that the hard way. But you can make sure their stories are heard, that their struggles lead to change. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing sometimes. I know. He pulled her against him. But it's not. Every magistrate you've trained, every case reviewed fairly, every person who gets a second chance, that's Marcus's legacy too, and Alara's, and yours. She leaned into his warmth, letting the truth of it settle. You couldn't save everyone, but you could keep trying, keep fighting, keep choosing compassion even when it hurt. That had to be enough. 3 years after the curse was resolved, Saren stood in the Eastern Territories again, but this time she was there for a festival. Harvest Festival. The first truly abundant harvest the region had seen in a decade. Fields full. Granaries stocked. Children healthy. The celebration was loud and chaotic and perfect. Music, dancing, food shared freely. People who'd been starving 3 years ago now had enough to be generous. Captain Mara found Saren near the bonfire. Never thought I'd see this, Mara said, gesturing at the crowd. People celebrating instead of mourning, laughing instead of planning rebellions. Does that mean you're out of a job? Saren teased. Nah, I'm on the oversight committee now. Turns out former rebels make good watchdogs against government abuse. Mara's smile was sharp. I get to make sure you don't backslide. Good, we need that. They stood together watching the celebration. I was wrong about you, Mara said eventually. When you first came to the camp, I thought you were naive, playing at compassion because it was trendy. Figured you'd abandon it the moment it got hard. And now? Now I think you're stubborn as hell and genuinely believe this stuff, which is annoying because it makes it harder to distrust you. Mara's expression softened. But also, thank you for not giving up, for making the king listen, for proving that change was possible. Saren's throat tightened. We did it together. You fought first. I just gave voice to the fight. Still counts. Later, Theron joined her. They danced badly, neither had natural rhythm, and laughed when they nearly tripped over each other. I have news, he said as they swayed. Lord Cassian proposed creating a formal position, Queen's Consort and Voice of Mercy. Official title, Seat on all councils, authority to investigate any case where justice might be compromised. Saren's eyes widened. A formal position? That makes me actually powerful. You're already powerful. This just makes it official. His smile was warm. The council voted unanimously. Even Ravel supported it, though she made sure everyone knew she was being pragmatic, not sentimental. Of course she did. So, what do you say? Want to officially be my partner in ruling this impossible kingdom? I already am your partner. True, but now you'll have a crown to prove it. A crown, her, the marked servant girl who'd spent 14 years invisible. Okay, she said. Yes, let's make it official. The coronation happened a month later, smaller than the wedding, but no less significant. Saren knelt before the kingdom's bishop, and a simple silver crown was placed on her head. Rise, Queen Saren, voice of mercy, protector of the voiceless. She stood, and the crowd erupted in applause. Theron was waiting at the bottom of the steps, his own crown catching the light. He took her hand, and together they faced the kingdom. We rule together, he announced, justice and mercy, stone and light, balanced. The marks on their skin blazed brilliant gold and silver, visible to everyone. This was the message. This was the promise. Valdron would never again be ruled by cruelty alone. Compassion had power now, a voice, a crown. That night, Serene and Theron stood on the palace balcony, looking out over the city. Do you ever miss it? Theron asked. Being invisible, not carrying all this responsibility. Saren considered. Sometimes. When the decisions get really hard, I miss when my biggest problem was getting blood out of grout. But she looked at the city, at the lights and windows, the people living their lives. I wouldn't go back. This matters too much. Even when it's exhausting? Especially then, because exhausting means we're actually doing something, actually changing things. She leaned against him. Besides, I have you. That makes the exhausting parts bearable. How romantic. I make exhaustion bearable. It's a gift. He laughed, and the sound still surprised her. Theron laughed easily now, smiled without calculation, showed emotion without fear. The Stone King was truly dead. This version, imperfect, still learning, but genuinely trying, was so much better. I love you, she said. I love you too, even though you've made my life infinitely more complicated. Especially because of that. Especially because of that, he agreed. They stood together as night fell over Valdron, a kingdom still imperfect, still struggling, but better than it had been, and getting better every day. 5 years after Saren stepped in front of the blade, a young girl was brought before the oversight committee. She was 12, marked, accused of stealing food. Saren sat in the judgment seat looking at this child who could have been her years ago, frightened, powerless, waiting to be punished for the crime of trying to survive. Tell me what happened, Saren said gently. The girl's story spilled out. orphaned, living on streets, starving. She'd stolen bread from a merchant's stall. The merchant was there, demanding justice. She's marked, probably used forbidden magic to steal. I want her punished. Saren looked at the marks on her own hands, the gold and gray lines that had become Valdrin's symbol for justice, tempered with mercy. The bread she stole, Saren said. How much was it worth? 3 copper. I'll pay you 6. Double. Saren pulled coins from her pocket. And the girl comes with me. The merchant blinked. Your Majesty? She's clearly capable of sneaking past your security. That takes skill. I can use that skill in the palace, training young scouts, testing our defenses. She'll be fed, housed, educated, and she'll work off her debt through service instead of suffering for it. She looked at the girl. What's your name? Kira, the girl whispered. Kira, you have a choice. Come work in the palace, learn a trade, have a future, or face punishment for theft. Which do you want? The palace, Kira said immediately. Good choice. Saren stood, moved to kneel in front of the girl. I was you once. Marked, powerless, convinced I'd never matter. But I got a chance. Someone chose to see my potential instead of just my crime. I'm giving you the same chance. Don't waste it. Kira's eyes were wide. You were marked? Saren held up her hand, showing the old brand beneath the newer magical marks. Still am. But I learned that being marked doesn't define you. What you do with your life does. The girl started crying. Saren pulled her into a hug and felt something break open in her chest. This was why the work mattered. After the session, Theron found her in their chambers. I heard you adopted a street orphan. Recruited, not adopted. There's a difference. Semantics. He sat beside her. You saw yourself in her. Of course I did. She's exactly what I would have become if you hadn't stopped your blade. Desperate, scared, one mistake away from execution. Saren leaned against him. I can't save everyone. But I can save her. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. He kissed her temple. You're going to make an excellent mother someday. Saren froze. What? I'm just saying, when we decide we're ready, you'll be good at it. We've never talked about, are you saying you want? Eventually. Maybe, if you do. He looked nervous, which was adorable. No pressure, just thinking about the future, what we're building. It includes that possibility, if you want it. Saren's mind spun. Children, a family, legacy beyond reforms and oversight committees. I want it, she said quietly. Someday. When we've stabilized things more. When I'm not constantly terrified I'll make the wrong call and get people killed. So never then, because you'll always be terrified of that. Fair point. She laced her fingers through his. Okay, someday soon. We'll talk about it seriously. Someday soon, huh? He agreed. The marks on their skin pulsed warm, a promise of futures they'd build together. 10 years after stepping in front of the blade, Saren stood in the same throne room where it all began. But this time, she was there for an anniversary. The mercy reforms, as they'd come to be called, had been in place for a decade. The results were undeniable. Crime rates down. Trust in government up. Other kingdoms adopting similar systems. Valdron had become a model instead of a cautionary tale. The ceremony honored everyone who'd made it possible. Captain Mara, now head of the Oversight Committee. Commander Cade, who'd learned to value diplomacy alongside military strength. The magistrates who'd implemented fair justice across territories. And in the crowd, faces Saren recognized. Alara, now a senior magistrate. Lord Garrett's son, who'd taken over his father's holdings and become an advocate for reform. The mother whose son Saren had saved from execution that first day. The boy now a productive member of society instead of a corpse. Lives saved, futures created, change made real. Theron spoke about the decade of transformation, about learning that strength and compassion weren't contradictions, about the courage it took to choose mercy in a world that praised cruelty. Then he looked at Saren. But none of this happens without one person's bravery. 10 years ago, a servant girl stepped in front of my blade. She had every reason not to, every reason to stay invisible, stay safe. But she chose to act, to risk everything for someone she barely knew, and that choice changed everything. He extended his hand. Saren took it, joined him at the center of the room. "You saved me," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Not just from the curse, from myself, from becoming exactly the monster everyone feared. You showed me there was another way, a better way." "We showed each other," Saren corrected. "You chose to listen, to change. That was your bravery, not just mine." They stood together, hands clasped, marks glowing. The symbol Valdron had come to recognize: balance, partnership, mercy and justice intertwined. The crowd rose in standing ovation. It went on, echoing off marble that had once run red with blood and now held only light. That night, Saren couldn't sleep despite her exhaustion. She wandered the palace halls, ending up in the throne room. Empty. Quiet. She traced her fingers along the floor, the same marble she'd scrubbed for years. The bloodstains were long gone, but the memory remained. "Can't sleep?" Theron's voice came from the doorway. "Too much in my head." She gestured at the space. "I keep thinking about that day, when I stepped in front of your blade. How terrified I was. How certain I was going to die." "What made you do it?" He joined her, sitting on the floor like they were normal people instead of rulers. "I've never asked. What made you risk everything?" Saren considered. "Honestly, I don't know. Impulse, rage at injustice, knowing that if I didn't try, I'd hate myself forever." She looked at him. "But also, I think part of me recognized something in you, beneath the cruelty. A person who was hurting, who'd built walls so high he couldn't see over them anymore. And you wanted to save me? I wanted to save everyone. You were just in front of me." She smiled. "Lucky you." "Lucky me," he echoed, and there was no sarcasm in it, just truth. They sat together in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been impossible together, who'd somehow made it work, who'd taken a kingdom built on fear and slowly, painfully, transformed it into something resembling hope. "We're going to keep making mistakes," Saren said eventually. "We're going to face cases where there's no right answer, times when mercy gets people hurt, times when justice feels like cruelty." "I know. But we keep trying anyway. Keep choosing compassion even when it's hard. Keep believing people can change." "Because the alternative is becoming what we fought against," Theron finished. "Yes. We keep trying, forever, if necessary." He pulled her close, and she leaned into him. The marks on their skin pulsed in perfect synchronization. This was the truth they'd learned. Mercy wasn't weakness. It was the hardest, bravest choice you could make. It meant seeing humanity in those who'd shown you none. It meant offering second chances knowing some would be wasted. It meant believing in better futures even when the present was dark. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, it transformed kingdoms, changed lives, saved kings from themselves, and servants from invisibility. "I love you," Saren said. "I love you too." Theron's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for stepping in front of my blade. Thank you for not finishing the swing. Best mistake I ever made. Best decision I ever made." They stayed like that until dawn broke over Valdron, light streaming through windows, touching marble that had seen so much pain and now held so much possibility. The Stone King was dead. Long live the King of Balance, long live the Queen of Mercy, and long live the kingdom they'd built together. Imperfect, still learning, but trying. Always trying. That had to be enough, and somehow, impossibly, it was.